Good morning, it's 7 o'clock. Welcome to Mornings with Richard and Frost.
With Sophie and Wolf. Good morning from me as well. Thanks for being with us.
Brexit is back on the agenda as the jostling for the Labour leadership starts, posing a challenge for Andy Burnham's run in a heavily Leave-supporting seat.
There's a warning that Britain's dementia care is in denial and regret, with up to 6-month waits for diagnosis.
How the lines of America's voting map are being redrawn by Team Trump to break up majority black districts and secure more Republican seats.
We're facing a nursing crisis. We'll be talking to the country's top nurse about growing staffing gaps and her plan to fix it.
England's Aaron Rice storms to a maiden major title after completing a 3-shot victory in the PGA Championship.
Good morning. Thanks for being with us. Well, Brexit is back on the agenda if it truly ever went away. Over the weekend, West Streeting called for the UK to rejoin the EU, which of course will go down very well with Labour members who we might need to back him in any leadership election.
But it poses a challenge for Andy Burnham as he attempts to fight the Markerfield by-election, which of course is a heavily Leave-supporting area. Rob is here with us. Gosh, so much to dissect, Rob. First simple question is, do we know exactly when the by-election is yet?
There's strong hints that it'll be the 18th of June, but I think we should find out for definite either today or in the days ahead. The writ needs to be moved in Parliament, it's the sort of technical term, and that's when we get the date.
And we refer there to the fact that this is a heavily Leave-supporting area, which is sort of 10-year-old data. We've got very recent data that suggests it's a very Reform-supporting area.
Yeah, the constituency, every ward in the constituency in the local elections, 10 days ago or so now, voted for Reform comfortably. The data, when pollsters are looking at where the seat might be in terms of Brexit specifically now, actually the country as a whole has swung further to the Remain side of the argument, which means that it's not necessarily as cut and dry as you might think. I kind of think that the discussions, though, about going back into the EU and what people think practically about that is not really the issue. The reason why you're getting this big crossover between Brexit voting areas and Reform voting areas is people just feeling that nothing really works for them, that the country doesn't work for people in the areas where they live. And I think that's why the sort of Brexit debate is more of a risk for Andy Burnham, because if, as his view is, long-term he wants to rejoin, if that punches through a little bit more, the risk is that people just start thinking, you're not listening.
I'm so intrigued by this by-election. I mean, it's like the by-election to end all by-elections. And the message that, if you don't like Keir Starmer, vote Labour. I mean, what is the message for, people on the doorstep as well? We were out and about talking to people, actually, in Makerfield ahead of the by-election. It's worth having a little listen and we'll get Rob's reflections.
Definitely happy to vote for Andy Burnham. I think he's... My worry is, though, that Reform are pretty strong around here. That's the thing. With the council elections recently, there's a lot of Reform. So, a bit worried, but, he's got our vote.
You're going to be voting for someone who's not going to be here, who's got bigger issues than Ashley Makefield, really. So, it won't be his priority. And that's what people are... I think that's what people are thinking, certainly what I'm thinking.
Andy Burnham seemed to be a fantastic candidate, and we really hope he wins.
They quite like Andy Burnham, I guess. He obviously polls quite well, particularly in the north of England. But I guess the question is, will that be enough?
Yeah, and it's been fascinating listening to some of the interviews that he's been giving this weekend. On Friday, I was thinking, how is he going to meld together, campaigning in a by-election where he doesn't want to be seen to be looking like he's sort of taking voters for granted, that he's just using this constituency as a stepping stone to get back to number 10. But how is he going to kind of combine that with the fact that, he's the sort of change candidate almost on this ballot now, despite being the government candidate? And he's been maybe more kind of upfront about his long-term ambitions that I thought. Like, yes, when he's asked, is this just a stepping stone to number 10, he says, I'm focused on this by-election, you know, that's for the future. But he is also talking about changing the Labour Party, bringing the Labour Party back to what it used to be. And he's talking about policies as well. He's talking about wider nationalisation policies of key utilities as well. That's not government policy.
Well,
so you've now got a Labour candidate campaigning in a by-election, pitching national policy that is at odds with what the government's got.
Of course he wants to be the leader. I mean, there's no secret there. The slight follow-up I have just of what this all means for the Prime Minister and the government, because when these things are unfolding and the situation we were in last week, part of it is it just sort of snowballs out of control and the person ends up having to step aside or whatever happens. He does have now, the Prime Minister, at least a 6-week stay of execution. And who knows what happens in that period of time with all of the levers of powers he has at his disposal. And it's certainly not a sort of positive 6 weeks ahead of him, and it's certainly not done and dusted. He's not safe by any stretch of the imagination. But it could be worse. This could have already begun, this leadership vote.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's why maybe the safe bet at the moment, I would have thought, if you're a Keir Starmer, is you sort of hold off doing anything until you get what happens in this by-election. I think if Andy Burnham wins in Makerfield, then, you know, the calculation changes for Keir Starmer, because I think you very, very quickly move into a situation where most people in Labour will think we're not maybe even going to have a leadership contest. I mean, where Streeting seems determined to fight it. He's already started fighting it this weekend, but given his polling in the members and given the fact that Andy Burnham would be coming off winning a very, very heavy reform voting constituency, I think I think the politics would get away from Keir Starmer, frankly, and I think in that sort of situation, you wouldn't be surprised if he actually came out and said something and set out a timetable for departure. You can't really see him fighting Andy Burnham in a leadership contest. But yeah, you're right. Everything changes so quickly at the moment, and politics is so volatile. Actually, just wait and see ain't a bad strategy.
And he might not win it.
Exactly.
Rob, thanks very much indeed. Andy Burnham said also in those weekends he wants to get rid of VAR.
Did he really?
Yeah. A policy I think that everyone in the country can, you know, really rally behind.
Vote, but I mean, that's it. Done.
It might be slight overreach. Not sure that's completely in the job description of the Prime Minister, but maybe it should be.
It'd be a vote winner.
It would be a vote winner.
The other classic vote winner would always be, I want to introduce 5 more bank holidays.
Yeah.
Always thought classic. And a free pint on each of them.
There you go.
No VAR. Love it.
Also, of course, the NHS, one that, on a serious note, I think politicians are going to be really held to account on, because we have a really stark warning out again today, just one of many warnings about the state of the NHS. And it's about dementia, saying that care in the UK is stuck in a system of delay, denial and neglect.
The Alzheimer's Society says people are waiting almost 6 months for a diagnosis. Our correspondent Barnaby's here with more. What can you tell us, Barnaby?
I think, as you just said, it's a pretty damning report on the state of Alzheimer's care and dementia care in the UK. I mean, just a bit of a correction on what we've just said. It actually is about 3.5 years, the average wait time from the first symptoms to a diagnosis. It takes about 6 months to get a diagnosis of dementia from going to a memory clinic. So a lot of people, they will have taken years just to get to that point. And this comes as GPs in this report. 4 out of 5 GPs are saying that people aren't going to their GP early enough. So people are waiting a huge amount of time to get that diagnosis, and that means that people are falling through the cracks. And I think that's the concern that comes through this report, is that people aren't getting the health support and the financial support that they are entitled to because they're not getting diagnosed early enough. The report also makes clear that there is no national system in place to monitor the progression of those symptoms. So we're not tracking how these symptoms are developing, and that's making it harder to treat people. Just to put this into some context, about 1 million people in the UK currently have dementia. That figure is expected to rise to 1.4 million by 2040, and we're spending huge amounts of money on it. We're spending about £40 billion every year on treating dementia. That's a figure that's going to rise to 90 billion by 2040. And the Alzheimer's Society say, unless we start dealing with this better, unless we start getting those early diagnoses out, that number is only going to go up, because if people aren't being diagnosed, they're going to have a crisis more early, and that's going to cost more money.
Barnaby, great stuff. Thanks so much.
To the States now, because Donald Trump's been accused of trading civil rights for Republican votes as America's election map is redrawn. Both Republicans and Democrats are hoping to boost their chances in this year's midterm elections by changing the borders on voting districts in their favour.
But in Memphis, President Trump's changes have erased one of the only black majority seats in the US South. David Blevins travelled to Tennessee to find out more.
This is an attempt to dilute my vote.
It's called redistricting, and it's redefining America.
It's unconstitutional, it's unfair, and they're trying to suppress the black vote.
Is Donald Trump tearing up civil rights to boost his chances of holding on to power?
This is white supremacy, straight up white supremacy.
To answer that question, we've come to the Deep South, to Memphis, Tennessee. It's the home of the blues, but it's being forced red by the redrawing of election maps in midterm election year. A process that has wiped out the only majority black voting district in this entire state.
I never thought that I would be in a position where I'm fighting for the rights that my grandparents and my great-grandparents already fought for.
Split down the middle, this is Shotwell Street, the latest dividing line in America. 9th District, the only Democratic seat here, has been carved up to benefit Republicans. But it's the only majority black district in Tennessee.
They try to dress it up, that this is about politics and numbers. No, it's about politics and racism.
David joins us bright and early from Washington. And by the way, as you can see the QR code on the screen now to watch his full report, well worth doing so. David, how much coverage is this getting? And how much is it being framed as an accident of both parties' attempts at redistricting, which is kind of a perennial issue that's quite surprising to us Brits, versus something really calculated?
I think it's getting more attention than you might expect because it's not unusual, of course, redistricting. It happens often. Both parties tend to redraw electoral boundaries, but not in this number and not at this speed. But I have to say it is the human element of it that is drawing most attention. Wilf, if you had told me a couple of days ago that the place where Martin Luther King was assassinated is now in the same voting district as the place where the Ku Klux Klan was founded, I would not have believed you. But that's what we discovered when we went to Tennessee. Tennessee's a Republican state, obviously, so Republicans there have carved one district into three, but that district is Memphis. It was not just the only district that returned a Democrat. It was the only district where the majority of voters are black. In fact, it's the most African-American city in all of America. And that's why the residents there are accusing the president of suppressing their vote.
But broaden it out for us just on this redistricting debate, which, again, our viewers here probably aren't as aware how often this comes up, but the significance of it this time around. There was a very important decision last week regarding Virginia, and it has slightly changed the betting markets, at least, predictions of what might happen in the midterms.
Yes, it's not unconstitutional. I think it's important to say that. Democrats and Republicans have both been redistricting for decades. But the timing is unusual because it tended to happen every 10 years, immediately after the census, and it was based really on demographic change. Donald Trump started this ball rolling by telling Republicans in Texas to find more Republican seats there, and the Democrats are, in their own words, now fighting fire with fire. The Supreme Court has given the president a bit of a head start by ruling that race can no longer be a factor in the drawing of these maps, and the Democrats, as you say, to some extent have tripped themselves up because one of their redrawn maps in Virginia was thrown out last week on procedural grounds. But considering that the Republicans currently hold the House of Representatives by just one seat, it's a wafer-thin majority. The math around all of this is going to be very significant when we come to November.
It certainly is, Dave. Great stuff, and well worth, again, as we mentioned, scanning the QR code on your screen right there and watching the full report from Dave.
Now, we're going to talk climate change next, because one of the new technologies people think might be able to actually help is sucking carbon dioxide out of the air and sticking it underground.
It's a key potential use to lower our emissions going forward. And we've spoken to residents in Merseyside about carbon capture and storage, as it's known, and the potential impact it might have on them there. Here's our science correspondent, Thomas Moore.
Who's this? What have we got here? Can you take a ring off?
Spotty.
Spotty? Which one?
When Chris moved with his growing family to the Wirral near Liverpool 3 years ago, he never imagined he'd be on the front line of a new net zero battle. A planned pipeline carrying 3 million tonnes of carbon dioxide a year from polluting industries will pass close to his house. It's part of the government's plans to tackle climate change, but he fears a rupture in the pipe would spread a suffocating cloud of the gas.
It will push the oxygen out of the way. It will sit and hang around just above the ground, a few metres deep. If that would happen at night time, it being an asphyxiant, that's really quite a risk.
It happened 4 years ago in Mississippi.
911. My friend, she's laying on the ground and she's shaking. She's kind of drooling out of the mouth. I don't know if she's having a seizure or not.
When emergency crews arrived, they found a high-pressure carbon dioxide pipeline had burst. White ice coated the ground. 45 people were taken to hospital. 200 were evacuated. We tracked down Jack. He coordinated the emergency response.
When I got on scene, it was an eerie sight. I describe it as something from a zombie apocalypse. The town is completely evacuated. There's vehicles just abandoned in the street. There's like an eerie chemical smell in the air. It was a strange, eerie sight. In my 35 years of emergency service, it was definitely one of the most unique sites I'd ever been on once I got there.
Really interesting this, Thomas, and your full report available via the QR code. I guess the key question I have on this is how beneficial is carbon capture and storage, and therefore is it worth pursuing it with the very real challenges to get it right down the line? Or is it one of those sort of window dressing attempts to lower our emissions?
Well, it's critical, according to the Carbon Committee, the Climate Change Committee that advises the government. They say there is no other way for some industries to get down to net zero. You have to find a way of taking their carbon and burying it below the sea where it's locked up. And the idea is that you would be able to move millions of tonnes from these cement works in Derbyshire and Staffordshire out into Morecambe Bay, down to the old gas fields there. But the problem is that the pipeline that would do that would take it very close to people's homes. This is a definite need. If you think about this one plant we went to, it produces one of the largest cement manufacturing places in the country. They produce twice as much carbon as all the homes in Liverpool. So they need to get rid of that to preserve jobs and so on and meet the government's objective for net zero. Now, according to the Peak Cluster Consortium, the risks are very low. They've learned from what happened in Mississippi with that explosive rupture there, and that they are regulated by the Health and Safety Executive. They say we are very confident this will be a very safe pipeline. And the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero also said that all carbon projects have to meet very strict regulations, both for the communities and for the environment.
Thomas, great stuff. Really appreciate it. Thomas Moore there for us.
We're going to talk now to our government guest. I'm delighted to say that the Deputy Prime Minister and Justice Secretary David Lammy joins us now. Good to have you on the programme. I just want to start off by talking about these justice reforms that you're announcing today, which do look quite significant. Just talk us through what it is you're doing.
Well, the youth justice system has not been looked at for 20 years, since the Tony Blair government. At that time, around 100,000 young people were passing through our courts. Today, fortunately, it's around about 13,000. We had 4,000 or so young people in custody. Today, that number's now 400. But the young people that are getting into trouble are more vulnerable, generally experience trauma. Many have been in the care system. They're a very difficult cohort. Many are prolific offenders, and we do need to make adjustments. And that's why I'm introducing youth-intensive courts, looking again at our youth court system, but also looking at the support we can give to parents.
Yeah, the parents thing is interesting. I think particularly perhaps in the wake of what we saw with Southport and the mother and father of the killer, whether they should have taken more responsibility, frankly. Under these reforms, could it be that a parent goes to prison for a crime committed by their child?
Well, in extremis, that is available to a judge. I would expect that that would be used incredibly rarely.
But it would effectively mean that you've been negligent in not flagging stuff up or not supporting your child, and that's an offence.
Parenting orders have sat on the statute books for years. They are not routinely being used by judges. The only thing a judge can do really is offer a fine. What parents of these kinds of children need is proper support. For example, if they themselves have an alcohol or a drug addiction, if they themselves are experiencing their own issues with, say, depression, they need to be able to be there for their child who's obviously offending. And so we do now need to give judges more support so these parenting orders are more robust, more holistic, and whole families can get the support that they need.
I was quite struck with an interview you'd done before where you said that growing up in Tottenham, going to prison was your greatest fear?
It was, because that was an era where Tottenham experienced the Broadwater Farm riots. It was an era where young black men were too often finding themselves in prison. I'd experienced that within my own extended family. And so for that reason, I had a deep-seated fear of one day losing my liberty and ending up on the wrong side of justice. Now, the way I did that was I took to my books and ended up at law school. But I obviously, every day of my life, I keep in mind that experience as I sit here remarkably all these years later as the Secretary of State for Justice.
So it drives you, basically?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you now about politics.
Of course.
It's got a by-election going on.
Of course.
Are you going to be out there campaigning for Andy Burnham?
100%.
My question on this by-election is, if you quite like Keir Starmer, who should you vote for?
Oh, look, this is a Labour by-election. We've got to fight for every vote. Reform will be challenging hard. I've known Andy Burnham for over a quarter of a century. We were both protégés of the wonderful Tessa Jow. We worked together all those years ago under Tony Blair. He will be a great addition to Parliament for Makerfield. He has my full support. I will be up there. Much of the Cabinet will be up there, of course. The Labour movement will be up there to make sure we win.
The reason I asked the question, though, it is a little bit confusing because, in a way, a vote for the Labour candidate in Makerfield is a vote to get rid of Keir Starmer. So if you kind of like Keir Starmer, feels a bit... Should you vote for Andy Burnham? Because we know, as soon as he gets back to Parliament, he's going to challenge for the leadership.
Let's step back. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. I thought that the Labour Party, over the last 10 days, had a spectacular own goal after those local election results. We now need to unite and pull together. We have a by-election to fight. We need to remember our responsibilities as a government. We are not in opposition. We have the levers of power. Today I'm talking about the Youth Justice White Paper. Last week we had the King's Speech. I want to see us deal with the special educational needs. I want to see those leasehold reforms. I want to see us standing by people in a cost of living crisis. All of that will be discussed on the doorstep in Makerfield. We need to ensure that these 10 days are brought to an end, because if we get 10 weeks, people will look at us, they will see what happened under the Tories, and we'll be out of office in a few years' time.
I mean, it sounds like you're kind of frustrated. Was it right that you were kind of like calling around colleagues, trying to get them to, rein it in, back the government? Did you have a few frank conversations?
None of us can have been immune to ordinary British people looking in at the Westminster bubble, seeing infighting and briefing and being turned off, when actually what they want is a government getting on with improving their lives. So yes, of course, now is the time to stop the own goals, to get on the pitch, to pass the ball amongst ourselves, to play in the right direction, to score some goals on behalf of the British public.
There's been a reignition, I should say, of the debate around Brexit. Wes Streeting saying that he'd like to rejoin the EU. Would you like to rejoin the EU?
I'm really proud that as Foreign Secretary, I was the first Foreign Secretary back around the European Union table with other Foreign Secretaries. It led to the summit last year. We have the SPS deal. We're moving forward on the work experience. We're back in Erasmus. We've got a summit coming up in 2 months' time. All that begun under me because I was determined that we would reconnect once again with Europe.
Would you like to rejoin the EU?
We set red lines for in the manifesto that we are absolutely committed to.
Would you like to rejoin
I
the
see
EU?
now that there's a debate about the next election. I'm not going to make a commitment about the next election and the next manifesto.
I know, I'm not
process.
asking you to do that.
That's a whole...
I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you, David Lammy, would you like to rejoin the EU?
And me, David Lammy, as Deputy Prime Minister, I'm committed to collective responsibility. The manifesto we stood on, Wes Streeting has left the government. He can have a debate, he can comment. That is not my position.
I won't tell anyone, go on. Just say, I know, no one's listening. Tell us what you really think. Come on. Do you want to leave the EU?
In government delivering for the British people, and I'm very proud.
It feels a bit like you're not going to answer this question.
I've begun a process that brought us back alongside the EU, discussing the issues that matter, like security, defence, how we bring down the cost of living, and of course, how we work together better.
Is it a helpful debate to have now?
Look, I think that we should remember that we are in government and the British people won't thank us for debates and comments. They want delivery. Delivery is what they want to see.
Okay. Just finally, Lisa Nandy spoke to my colleague Trevor Phillips over the weekend and said the Prime Minister has got to take his own decision about whether he wants to take the fight forwards. I mean, you're obviously close to Keir Starmer. What is his frame of mind? Is there a chance that he might set out a timetable to leave his
Let
spot?
me be really clear. Keir Starmer remains the most resilient person I know in my life. I spoke to him twice yesterday. He has a strength of character, a fighting experience. There will be no timetables. What there is getting on with the business of government. Really crystal clear about that. At the moment, there is no contest. What there is his determination to deliver for the people, British people, accelerate the pace over the coming months, much to do.
So just to be crystal clear, no timetable for departure set out by Keir Starmer?
There will be no
Not
timetable
happening.
for departure.
OK,
No.
that's very clear. Thank you very much indeed,
Thank
David
you.
Lammy, speaking to us there. Coming up, we're going to be talking about the NHS with nurses warning there are not enough of them working in the NHS to keep patients safe. That's coming up.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you? Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be allowed to warn.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist...
Hi, darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
...is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more.
Well, let's kick off and make a statement.
What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs?
He's coming out! What more do you need?
We're back. The Royal College of Nursing is warning a collapse in the number of workers entering the field, along with more complex patient needs, are becoming a deadly mix.
We can talk now to the head of the Royal College of Nursing, Professor Nicola Ranger, who's here with us. So what's the warning are you giving today?
Good morning. We've got 3,000 nurses arriving here in Liverpool today, and our last shift survey said that actually only 1 in 10 nurses felt that they had the right number of nurses to be able to give the care that they really wanted to give patients. We think that's a staggeringly low number and a real indictment of the state of the NHS and a state in which nursing is currently in.
How much of it comes down to a lack of nurses in terms of numbers?
It's a mixture of both. Sadly, nursing numbers are sometimes designed on affordability rather than patient need. We know that patients are living longer with more complex conditions. We know the challenges in the NHS at the moment. And sadly, the number of nurses that is sometimes employed in this country are built on how much money is had rather than what patients actually need. And I'm ashamed to say that we're going to be going into another year where student nurses are worried about getting a job. That's an absolute disgrace when there is so much need in the NHS and other sectors of care.
You've got a new health secretary, another one. How much of a problem is it, this kind of merry-go-round, if you like, of politics when it comes to the deep reforms, the long-term reforms the health service needs?
You know, I have to say, I have to give credit. I think our last health secretary did listen. We didn't solve everything, but there was at least a sense of listening and understanding the scale of the challenge. I very much hope the new health secretary will follow a similar vein, because we've got deep and significant problems in this country. Nursing has been neglected for decades. And actually, my warning to any government is you will fail unless nursing is invested in. The health of this nation is absolutely connected to the wealth of this nation. And nursing is the lifeblood in any service, whether it's in a hospital or community. And unless nursing is invested in, this country will not thrive.
Is the UK leaving the EU 10 years ago, was that a factor in the job that you, as leading nursing as a whole, but nurses individually, faces? Did it get harder because of that, or is it a distraction and an irrelevance that your former boss in the health secretary, the former health secretary, has sort of started a debate about again?
I think it's a complex group of things that all came at the same time. Leaving the EU did have an effect on the amount of brilliant European nurses that came and worked with us. But at the same time, we also took away the bursary, which actually meant that nurses used to be able to have their university fees free in this country, which I think is the right thing. They're an essential service. Nurses now have to pay for the honour of being a nurse and come into a massive amount of debt, and have, unlike other students, they can't work in their holidays because they have to do their clinical hours. So that combination of Brexit and taking away the bursary had a significant impact. And I have to say, we then had, coming into that, we had 40,000 vacancies in nursing in England alone, right before we went into a pandemic. An absolute deadly mix of disaster, actually. And without our international nurses coming from India, coming from Nigeria and coming from the Philippines, we'd be in an even worse position than we are now. But we do have to take responsibility. We are the third highest OECD country that is reliant on our international nurses, and we'd be in a terrible state without them. But we've got to have proper workforce planning that ensures a real proper resilience of a domestic supply of nursing and nurses and student nurses. So to go into this summer with student nurses from this country worrying about getting a job is an absolute disgrace.
I mean, you really paint the picture of how difficult the situation is for nurses right now in the NHS. Of course, one thing that has cost the NHS money recently is the resident doctor strikes. And I just wondered, what's your own opinion on that now? Are you absolutely behind them? Do you think it is completely their right that, cheering them on? Or are you looking at this and thinking, actually, nurses have really got things very, very difficult indeed, and actually, I guess they need to kind of rein it in? What's your own view on it?
Well, we've managed to strike a deal with the government around elevating nurses' pay because we are weighted to the bottom of the pay scale within the NHS. We're pleased with that scheme and we hope it'll make a significant difference to lift us from the bottom. We absolutely respect our medical colleagues, our doctors and nurses are the closest relationship. And actually, they have the right to continue to fight for what they need. The only thing that I'm a little bit disappointed with the doctors at the moment is that they are questioning the role of advanced nursing practice. That isn't okay. And I think at the moment when the public are really worried about coming into hospital, it's absolutely vital that nurses and doctors stay in a very close working relationship.
Nicola, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
To Greece now, where NATO's biggest ever special forces exercise in Europe is taking place. So European allies looking to beef up their defences, not only, of course, because of the threat of Russia, but also to prepare for less American support as well. Here's our security and defence editor, Deborah Haynes.
I'm in the midst of NATO's biggest ever special forces exercise in Europe. Here, soldiers are parachuting into Greece, where they've been told that up to 100 enemy forces have infiltrated the area, posing threats, launching sabotage attacks, cyber attacks. The soldiers are going to have to move forward. They won't be doing it for real in this exercise, but their job is to work out the scale of the threat and whether this is the start of a much bigger invasion.
Bottom line up front, it provides us a unique opportunity to train together, get stronger together, and ultimately fight together.
Do you feel ready for war?
Yes, of course. This is exactly the reason and the purpose and the end state we are trying to reach.
We've watched several waves of jumps. Soldiers from Greece, from North Macedonia, from Switzerland, not a NATO country, and also from Albania, jumping down, landing. We're in the maritime part of the exercise. We're off the coast of Athens. There's an American C-130 aircraft flying overhead. American and Greek special forces are going to be jumping out of that plane. You can see them exiting now. They are on a mission to join up with two boats that were pushed out of the aircraft on a previous rotation a couple of minutes ago. This is part of a 10-day exercise that's taking place across 10 nations, from here in the Mediterranean to the Black Sea to the Baltic Sea. The fact that American special forces make up a third of the forces that are being used as part of this exercise really underlines the vital role that the US is playing in NATO deterrence and defence at a time when Donald Trump is actually threatening to withdraw the footprint of US forces in the alliance. There is a lot of concern amongst European allies about what happens to them and their defences should that take place, which again is why exercises like this are clearly so important. You're jumping with the Americans tonight. What's it like working with them?
Just like working with any other people. I feel very close to them, yes.
And do you think, obviously, I'm not asking you a political question, but do you think you'd be able to do this without the Americans?
Yes, of course. Of course.
The intent is to prepare the special forces of NATO to be ready to spearhead, to defend territory here from hostile attacks under the threshold of an all-out invasion that, of course, would be an Article 5 moment.
Deborah Haynes, our security and defence editor there with that report. Let's talk Brexit again now, because as we've been discussing this morning, it's back on the agenda after Wes Streeting over the weekend called for the UK to rejoin the EU, something that will go down well with Labour Party members, but might not with everyone in the country.
Yeah, so for those who back the Leave campaign, they would say, I'm sure, that rejoining to the bloc would be a betrayal. So what's the economic case for a Brexit backflip? Our business correspondent Paul Kelso has been looking at the numbers.
Wes Streeting says the UK should rejoin the European Union, that Brexit's been a catastrophic mistake and rejoining will rebuild our economy and trade. It's a political pitch based on an economic assumption that things can only get better if we rejoin. But absent a time machine, it might not be that straightforward. First question, have things got worse? The answer by most economic consensus is yes. Since the Brexit vote, there have been various independent assessments, all of them showing a negative impact on GDP. The OBR said that productivity would decline by 4% by 2035. The Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development said GDP would decline 5% by 2030, and the US National Bureau of Economic Research by 6 to 8% by last year. How do things actually look today? Well, relatively good if you only look at the most recent data. GDP for the first quarter of this year makes the UK the fastest growing economy in the G7. Some Brexiteers have claimed this as proof that the doom-mongering was, well, just that. Now, take the timeline back a little, though, to pre-pandemic, and you see UK GDP has underperformed the Eurozone. Now, disentangling Brexit from the massive economic shocks that followed the pandemic, the Ukraine war, now Iran, is hard. Would the UK have been immune had we still been in the EU? Well, no. But were we more exposed because we chose to make a fundamental change to our most important economic relationship just before these generational challenges hit? Well, yes. Now, the EU was and remains our largest single trading partner, 41% of exports last year. That share has declined a bit. Now, the US is our largest single country trading partner at 22%. Then comes China at 3%, and then scores of smaller relationships that make up the other third of trade. Now, one of the claimed benefits of Brexit was the freedom to do trade deals with these countries, and there have been some with Australia, New Zealand, and Japan, each worth less than 0.1% to GDP, though, and India a little more than that. Now, every little helps, but none of those are game-changing. The great prize for Leavers was a trade deal with the US, but that hasn't happened, and since Donald Trump's second term, barriers have gone up, not come down. Last year, Keir Starmer did do a narrow deal on beef, ethanol, steel, cars and pharmaceuticals, but it's not legally binding and it's subject to presidential whim. The Prime Minister does now want to move closer to the EU. The King's speech includes a bill to increase food and drink trade by removing checks and accepting EU standards. Now, immigration loomed large in the Brexit debate a decade ago with promises it would decline. This is what actually happened. EU migration, the red line here, did go down, but non-EU numbers soared. A huge wave of legal migration now in decline, but it's an even bigger political issue now than it was then. It's highly unlikely the EU would hand back the same favourable terms on which we left, and freedom of movement is likely to be non-negotiable. The success or failure of Brexit was always going to be about what governments chose to do with it, and the same is likely to apply to rejoining. Now, one final chart that might explain why Wes Streeting is raising the spectre of Europe now. Polling shows that nearly 60% of people think leaving was a mistake, though tellingly Andy Burnham is not supporting a return as he fights a by-election in a Leave voting seat. What appetite there is to reopen the Brexit debate in the country beyond the Labour leadership campaign, well, that's another question entirely.
Paul Kelso there for us. We're going to have a quick look at the weather next.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News weather.
The weather warms up and settles down by the end of the week, with temperatures expected to reach the low to mid-20s Celsius, a big contrast with recent temperatures which have been lower than average for this time of year. For now, though, conditions remain unsettled, with showers spreading eastward across the UK mainland, merging to give some longer spells of rain. Eastern counties will have a mostly dry, bright start to the day, along with Scotland and Northern Ireland. Increasing cloud and stronger winds across the Republic of Ireland will bring rain by the middle of the day.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
Jack is here because there's some exciting golf news to talk about.
Yeah, overnight. Do you know what? I didn't stay till the end. I did a list of who was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I thought the winner will come from those. I'll be fine. Did not. It came from way below that. It was a very congested leaderboard, but in the end, Aaron Rai has become the first Englishman to win the PGA Championship in over 100 years. So we'll be telling you about him and showing you some of his best bits.
People that pod together, they have a little hive brain going on. They've not had a good week.
I've had a good week. There's a teaser there, a teaser.
Oof. OK, nothing to see here. Drama over. Full stop. Anyway, we'll get to that. She will be mortified.
So she's the first female chancellor. I popped upstairs, made myself a cheese sandwich, and now I'm with you.
Annalise has come dressed in the magenta of electoral dysfunction. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Big stories don't always come from big cities. I'm Lisa Dowd and I'm Sky's Midlands correspondent.
You are not getting in this elevator, OK?
The judge made it very clear that she could see no justifiable reason why Sakulas wasn't here facing British justice.
I promised I would get him justice.
Free, wherever you get your news. This is what they're up against, that the wind is the really big problems. It is back-breaking work and the smoke is thick. It's been working well. Water levels are dropping, but no one knows what impact further rain will have. What would you do if this place wasn't open? This is the exact spot in Nottingham where their 19-year-old son, Barnaby Webber, lost his life.
I just think it's so cruel and so harsh.
It's really scary. We're terrified.
In this community, I'm told that everybody knows someone affected by COVID.
Hopefully this will be the last wave.
Sky News gets the full story first. Change seems tantalisingly close in this corner of the UK. Wales was the first to introduce the plastic bag charge. It's legal to let go. Set the speed and take the hands off. It's almost driverless, but not quite. Hans is a highly trained police dog. The force is incredible. It's really frightening, actually. This is my patch, my specialism. It's also my home.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting.
The whole neighborhood has rallied around her. It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
Welcome back. Time for the sport and a great British success story yesterday, which has kind of surprised everyone.
Yeah, it has surprised everyone. I think it's quite unlikely because it was such a congested leaderboard. There was about, 30 players, not really exaggerating, that could win the PGA Championship. It was so tight at the top and it kept the lead kept swapping around. You thought, Rory's going to make his move. He's, playing a bit better. And then in the end, it was won by Aaron Rai, who was there or thereabouts, but not right at the top of the leaderboard until his back nine, which was fantastic. Now, if you've never heard of Aaron Rai, he's an Englishman. He's got Indian, Kenyan parents. He grew up in Wolverhampton, supports Wolves. He plays with 2 golf gloves on because when he was a child, it was quite cold when he was practicing in Wolverhampton. And he covers all of his golf clubs, so all the irons get covered and not just the drivers. You know, most people just cover the drivers because money was tight growing up and his father really wanted him to protect his equipment and keep it as long as possible because there wasn't any money to buy it again. So he covers all his golf clubs. And afterwards, they asked a lot of the players, you know, what do you think of him? And honestly, everyone has got such lovely words to say about, not a bad word to be said about Aaron Rai, which is quite something. You know, he's sort of known as a hard worker, a grinder, you know, not a sort of supersonic child star or anything like that. He's really, really worked at his craft and got the massive reward of winning his maiden major.
It's lovely, that background, actually. It kind of makes you kind of even happier for him,
rooting
right?
for
Yeah.
it, aren't you? So this is how he did it. It was a very difficult course, and I think a lot of the pros found it very difficult to get birdies on that course. But he got this eagle, it's massive eagle, at the 9th. This brought him right up the leaderboard and into contention. It was the Aronmick Golf Club in Pennsylvania, and I think so many of them struggled with it. He said afterwards he really enjoyed it. He then got 4 birdies on the back 9, including a really difficult shot. Have a look at this. It's a really big putt on the 17th. And as the commentators were teeing it up, they were just basically saying this is a really difficult putt, but somehow he sinks it. And he is right in contention at that point. So he finished 9 under. There he is with the trophy, obviously considerably richer. $3 million or so richer this morning. His wife is also a pro golfer, so you know he gave her a lot of credit for his support and keeping calm this weekend. And a lot of golfers say he's just so calm under pressure anyway. But when he won, he did his speech. He gave credit to his mum and dad, who've obviously played a huge part in his success. Let's have a listen.
It's phenomenal to think of how many things have gone into it, and extremely rewarding to be stood here at the end of this week.
I have to say, one of my questions that comes out of this is, why do you only wear 1 golf glove in golf? Doesn't everyone wear 2?
I don't know.
I'm not a golfer.
Well, I think it's because it sort of does hurt your hand.
Yeah, but then why don't you wear 2?
Well, because I suppose
it started a trend.
It depends if you're like left or right-handed.
But you use both hands.
Go to the driving range. Don't wear a golf glove. Come back and
No, I'm saying, why don't you wear 2 gloves like he does?
I don't think you need to. But you know, he was cold, so that's why he wears 2. If I ever meet him, I'm going to ask him. Did you watch the football yesterday? West Ham under so much pressure. Of course, you know, at this point, you know, struggling for survival. You are under so much pressure, right? There's no other way of putting it. But they go to Newcastle and they lose 3-1. Newcastle played better than they've played in ages, but the way West Ham gifted them 2 goals came in for such a lot of criticism from all the pundits. Roy Keane was absolutely scathing, saying they're fighting for their life in the Premier League and they have literally been gifted, Newcastle gifted the first 2
I haven't seen that one yet.
goals. The situation is West Ham are in the bottom 3. They will go and play Leeds in the last game of the season, which is not easy because Leeds have been finishing with a real flourish. Spurs play away at Chelsea, obviously the other contender to go down away at Chelsea on Tuesday, needing now really only a point to be safe because their goal difference is so superior. And then the other sort of news from... They've got a terrible record at Chelsea. And Chelsea have just signed Xabi Alonso, confirmed it yesterday on a 4-year deal. So you've got this new manager. Well, there could be new manager bounce, even though he doesn't start until July. There could be, we want to impress him, we want to, you know, finish strongly after a bit of a catastrophe of a season. And Xabi Alonso, a really serious manager who can win things and does win things and be able to turn things around. You know, winning the Bundesliga with Bayer Leverkusen. You know, really good manager who understands the Premier League, having played in it, and speaks the language you need to speak in a dressing room as well. So you wonder if there's going to be a bounce there, and it might be quite hard for Spurs, but if they get a point, they're safe.
I mean, it feels to me like because there's been all this focus on whether or not Spurs are going to go down or not. We've almost kind of not spoken about what a huge deal it will be if West Ham go down. I mean, they're a massive club with a huge stadium
Huge
as well.
stadium, which they've pretty much filled, 60,000 watching. I mean, they have got a really good fan base. So I think even if they do go down, they'll still have a really good fan base. But they will lose their key players, you'd imagine, like Jared Bowen.
And it can be very, very difficult. No matter how big the club, it can take an awfully long time to get back to the Premier League.
And you will have to offload players because you've got to, financially make it work now. You can't have all these really expensive players. I don't know if you watched United play yesterday, playing Forest. They won 3-2. There was another handball controversy, a VAR controversy. Have a look at this. So, and this was, again, the pundits like, what is going on? The ball hits Mbermo, it kind of cannons off his hip, hits his arm, and then Cunha scores the goal. Everybody thinks, because it goes to VAR, that this is going to be disallowed because it's a very obvious handball. But the referee sticks with his original decision and the goal is allowed to stand, and that's, in the end, the deciding goal because it finishes 3-2 to Man United. It's a shocker, that's what Gary Neville said. But no, the thing is, like, nobody understands it. Nobody understands the handball rule. I mean, it used to be that handball was a deliberate handball. Like Maradona, the hand of God. And it used to be so obvious what was
Burnham
handball.
for Prime Minister, solve this.
Yeah, just get rid of VAR.
Well, he doesn't like VAR.
He wants to get rid of VAR.
Is he a Man United fan?
He's an Everton fan, yeah.
He's an Everton fan.
But he's come out saying he wants to get rid of VAR. I'm not sure if it's actually in his power.
That is not in his remit.
By the way, massive game tonight.
For the Arsenal?
Yeah, but for anyone challenging for the title, I'm being biased, but it's a huge game tonight.
I don't think we should talk about it. But, yeah, it is big. Arsenal needing to keep up this winning, grinding it, getting over the line somehow, some way, in order to not allow Manchester City back
8
in.
p.m.
They are circling.
late kickoff for breakfast show
We should mention as well, Red Roses won the Six Nations yesterday, beating France, and that was incredible. 8th successive time they've won. And you could say they have the most money, they have the most investment, blah, 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 they should win it. But they had an awful lot of injuries this season, and they had a lot of players who were pregnant. So a lot of the young players had to come in and really step up.
Wow, that's extraordinary.
So it was a great achievement.
Jackie, great stuff. Thanks so much. We are out of time for this hour of the programme. We'll be right back on the other side of this with all the day's top stories.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
Perfect. Let's bring you some breaking news.
Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking,
Thank you so much.
trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
morning. It is 8 o'clock. Welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
With Sophie and Wilf, a very good morning from me as well. Lots ahead.
The Justice Secretary tells us the Prime Minister will not be setting out a timetable for departing from number 10 as his leadership contenders pull focus.
President Trump says the clock is ticking for Iran as talks to bring the war to an end appear to stall.
There's a warning that Britain's dementia care is in denial and regret, saying patients are being missed at every stage.
Also today, The Power of a Good Book. We'll be chatting to the author Matt Haig about the positive impact of therapeutic novels.
And in golf, England's Aaron Rai storms to a maiden major title after completing a 3-shot victory in the PGA Championship.
A very good morning to you. The Prime Minister will not be setting out a timetable for leaving number 10. That's what his Justice Secretary, David Lammy, has told us this morning.
And it comes after another of his ministers, Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy, told Sky News it would have to be a personal decision for Keir Starmer on whether to step down. Here's what David Lammy said to us.
Let me be really clear. Keir Starmer remains the most resilient person I know in my life. I spoke to him twice yesterday. He has a strength of character, a fighting experience. There will be no timetables. What there is getting on with the business of government, really crystal clear about that. At the moment, there is no contest. What there is his determination to deliver for the people, British people, accelerate the pace over the coming months, much to do.
So just to be crystal clear, no timetable for departure set out by Keir Starmer?
There will be no timetable for departure.
No timetable. Keir Starmer might want to stay, but of course, if Andy Burnham does win in Makerfield, well, a leadership challenge is inevitable and it could almost be a coronation for the Manchester mayor. But he's got to win first. And these guys might have something to say about that. Reform applications have closed to be the Reform candidate in Makerfield. We're expecting the announcement later this week. Labour applications close at midday today, but my goodness, you'd have to be brave, wouldn't you, to go up against Andy Burnham? That really would be a curveball, wouldn't it? And then polling day expected on the 18th of June. And honestly, I cannot remember another by-election with these consequences. It could really be almost a direct referendum on who should be Prime Minister.
Rob's here to discuss all of this with us. I mean, 18th of June, nothing can really take place significantly until then now, or will the government try and get on with the job in the meantime?
I think that's certainly the impression that the government wants to put out. I mean, listening to David Lammy in that interview, if Keir Starmer has been doing any soul-searching this weekend, he's clearly come to a conclusion about what he's going to do for now, and it's that he's going to stay. We're expecting to see the Prime Minister in some capacity later today. So, yeah, I think they will be wanting to give the impression that, as David Lammy was characterising it, this was sort of a torrid 10 days for Labour, but they're moving through it. Look, I think that does completely miss the reality of the practical impact of what the last week has had. But, as we were saying an hour ago, a lot can happen in 4 or 5 weeks, and Andy Burnham might not win that by-election. If he doesn't win it, I think that completely changes the equation of what happens next, and that may well be part of the calculation as to why, for now, Keir Starmer's saying that he's going to stay put.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because look, if on paper, it looks like quite a hard by-election for Andy Burnham to win. But then if even Andy Burnham can't win it with his positive personal poll ratings, then surely that's going to spark a whole load of other soul-searching in Labour.
Yeah, absolutely, because it is it's a proof of concept election, right? If Andy Burnham is the person that can come back and make Labour competitive against Reform, can take them into the next election to beat Reform, well, if he can't win a by-election when his name is on the ticket and beat Reform, how on earth is he going to be able to lead a party and a government to beat Reform as well? So, if he couldn't win this, the argument would go, well, you wouldn't want him to be Prime Minister anyway, because it shows that he can't do it.
What an extraordinary sort of 4 or 5 weeks we're going to have ahead of us. I mean, David Lammy confirmed he will be up there campaigning for Andy Burnham. Presumably, I mean, we can't have all of the cabinet, but not the Prime Minister. I mean, we're going to have just the most bizarre setup, aren't we?
Keir Starmer can't campaign to be the candidate he wants to stop Keir Starmer.
I agree, but can the Deputy PM do that? I'm just saying, it's the most extraordinary setup that we have.
It's nuts.
And
well, now you've got this sort of shadow boxing in the leadership contest going on between Wes Streeting and Andy Burnham. Wes Streeting, who, in theory, on paper, says he's fully behind Andy Burnham. He thinks that, yes, we should have a battle of ideas and we should have the broadest possible leadership contest when it eventually comes about, but also is being accused in some of the papers by allies of Andy Burnham this morning of trying to scupper his chances in Makerfield by bringing up rejoining the EU and trying to push the topic back onto something that would be uncomfortable for Andy Burnham in that constituency. Now, Wes Streeting's team has hit back to that article that was published in The Times this morning, saying it's based on anonymous sources who do no favours for the people and the party they supposedly support. Wes has always been pro-European. He said what he believes to be in Britain's long-term interest. We shouldn't fear debate.
I mean, come on. Of course he brought it up, well-timed, to make it hard for Andy Burnham. But if Andy Burnham's going to whinge about talking about policy areas, then, you know, you're not the one for the job. You know, this is an absurd briefing war. Get on with it. Win or don't.
You're going to enjoy the next 4 or 5 weeks then, Wilf.
Well, I mean, come on. That's of all the things to whinge about, I mean, that seems... It was, after taking your time to announce whether you're going to go or not by Wes Streeting, you have to say quite well played over the weekend on this point.
Yeah, it was punchier than I thought, to be honest. I thought we'd at least have a period where everyone sort of pretended that, at least sort of maintained the pretence that there wasn't a shadow leadership election going on, and that went away for a little bit. But, you know, within 24 hours, you had eye-catching announcements, speeches, sort of punchy social media videos coming from Wes Streeting. So, yeah, he seems keen.
Yeah, we shall see what happens. It's going to be... So June the 18th, not 100% confirmed, but it looks like June
No, we should get the writ in the next day or two, hopefully. 4 weeks Thursday, I think that'll be.
Lots to discuss about that in the coming weeks. Now, President Trump has issued a renewed warning to Iran after speaking to Benjamin Netanyahu.
So on Truth Social, he said, for Iran, the clock is ticking and they better get moving fast or there won't be anything left of them. Time is of the essence.
Reports suggest the US and Israel are undergoing the most intense preparations for potential renewed attacks against Iran since the ceasefire was agreed last month.
So Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu talked on the phone earlier today and they spoke about Iran, that's according to an Israeli official.
So oil prices up a bit this morning, but we're back above 110 now, Brent. 111 is the rate we're at, and it's been ticking up steadily over the last week or so. In particular, I guess that nothing concrete came out of the US-China discussions to try and stop the war. I'm just looking at the borrowing costs in particular here as they've now opened. They're sort of steady, which I think is encouraging because we've seen bond yields surge both Friday and today in Japan in particular, and that's kind of really lifted the sort of momentum of borrowing costs everywhere. And I think there's sort of a little bit of a sigh of relief this morning that they're up a little bit, the 10 years at 5.18, but it's not up more. Of course, it's risen quite a lot already in the last few weeks, so it's not a big victory.
This morning, we also spoke to the Justice Secretary about his plans to shake up the youth justice system. So the government's hoping that these reforms will prevent children from starting a life of crime. It includes strengthening so-called parenting orders.
These currently allow parents and guardians to be compelled to address children's behaviour through counselling and guidance or to face fines. Now, the repercussions could be tougher. We asked David Lammy if a parent could even go to jail for their child's crime.
Well, in extremis, that is available to a judge. I would expect that that would be used incredibly rarely.
But it would effectively mean that you've been negligent in not flagging stuff up or not supporting your child, and that's an offence.
Parenting orders have sat on the statute books for years. They are not routinely being used by judges. The only thing a judge can do really is offer a fine. What parents of these kinds of children need is proper support. For example, if they themselves have an alcohol or a drug addiction, if they themselves are experiencing their own issues with, say, depression, they need to be able to be there for their child who's obviously offending.
I feel like it's perhaps a response in the wake of what we saw with Southport, where the findings of that review and the report found very strongly that the parents of Axel Rida-Cabana, the killer, should have done more in alerting the authorities when they saw this pattern of behaviour.
Also, quite interesting, focus of the government trying to move the conversation on, get back to policy, and we'll see if that continues all week and whether it works or not. Now, charities warning that dementia care in the UK is stuck in a system of delay, denial and neglect.
The Alzheimer's Society says people are waiting almost 3.5 years for a diagnosis after first showing symptoms. Well, I can talk to Barnaby about this. What are they saying then exactly?
Well, essentially, I think the concern from the Alzheimer's Society is that people are falling through the cracks of a system that isn't fit for purpose. I think that's the top line. As you just said, 3.5-year waiting time for a diagnosis from first showing symptoms. That's a really long time. And the concern is that because of that wait, people aren't getting the health support, the financial support that they're entitled to. There was one statistic that came out of the report that I thought was particularly shocking. It was that 1 in 5 people with a dementia diagnosis didn't get support after their diagnosis at all. I'm quoting the report here. They said families felt like they'd been released into the wild. The Alzheimer's Society are calling for a national system to be in place to monitor people's symptoms. And the reason this is so important is because of the sheer numbers of people who experience dementia. About 1 million in the UK currently. That figure is expected to rise to 1.4 million by 2040. Now, the chief executive of the Alzheimer's Society say this is not due to a backlog. She believes that there is a systems failing in how we deal with dementia. Of course, the government say that they are investing heavily in care for people with dementia and in research, but clearly this charity want them to go further and faster.
Barnaby, thanks so much. President Trump has been accused of trading civil rights for Republican votes as America's election map is redrawn. Well, ahead of crucial midterm elections, that's what legislators in Tennessee have been doing.
So in Memphis, it means that one of the only black majority seats in the US South has been erased. David Blevins travelled there to find out more.
This is an attempt to dilute my vote.
It's called redistricting, and it's redefining America.
It's unconstitutional, it's unfair, and they're trying to suppress the black vote.
Is Donald Trump tearing up civil rights to boost his chances of holding on to power?
This is white supremacy, straight up white supremacy.
To answer that question, we've come to the Deep South, to Memphis, Tennessee. It's the home of the blues, but it's being forced red by the redrawing of election maps in midterm election year. A process that has wiped out the only majority black voting district in this entire state.
I never thought that I would be in a position where I'm fighting for the rights that my grandparents and my great-grandparents already fought for.
Split down the middle, this is Shotwell Street, the latest dividing line in America. 9th District, the only Democratic seat here, has been carved up to benefit Republicans. But it's the only majority black district in Tennessee.
They try to dress it up, that this is about politics and numbers. No, it's about politics and racism.
Voters choose representation. Representatives don't choose voters.
Dr. King was shot at the Lorraine Motel.
They've been here before. This community knows all about struggle. It was here that Martin Luther King gave his last speech and breathed his last breath.
And the shot rang out. Kapow!
District 9 is holy ground to the civil rights movement and to the family of its late leader.
I mean, voting is fundamental to what democracy represents. As it relates to my father, particularly, yes, he was there in Memphis and was gunned down in Memphis. So it is like a devastating blow.
Republicans are winning this battle, making it harder for Democrats to flip the House. But redistricting means much more than politics in a place like this.
Memphis is a 64% black city. It's the blackest city in the entire country. And to combine it with the same district that the Ku Klux Klan was founded in is truly unconscionable.
But there are two sides to this story, so we headed east.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
To the monthly meeting of Republicans in Bolivar, who reject claims of racism.
I think people assume whites are voting one way and blacks are voting another way, and it's not true.
I think everybody's trying to win, and it's gamesmanship now. If you believe you're right and you want to win and do the right thing, you're going to do everything in the world to retain power and win.
Bolivar and Memphis are in the same district now, but they're worlds apart. When the sun goes down in one, the lights come up in the other.
From blues to country to rock and roll, the music of Memphis is its own map of American history. But the city of Elvis, B.B. King and Otis Redding is getting a political makeover, and there's nothing these streets can do about it. This is Donald Trump's town now, and in his quest to hold on to power, it's now or never.
When she's gone, she's gone.
David Blevins, Sky News in Memphis.
Now, a multi-billion-pound pipeline of investment opportunities is being launched at the Great North Investment Summit. Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham is also expected to make an appearance. Let's bring in the Labour Mayor of the North East, Kim McGuinness. A very good morning to you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning.
Tell us what this gathering is exactly for those that aren't aware.
Well, this is the Great North coming together, all of our northern mayors, plus a huge number of investors coming together in Leeds to discuss how we make the Great North even better. We've got our huge investment perspectives there, as you can see, attracting billions of pounds of investment into the North. But also, this is about the North coming together and saying, we will never settle for second best, and we're ambitious. For example, we've been talking about a northern bid for the Olympics this week. That's something that is firmly on the agenda today.
What is your pitch to external foreign investors? Sell the North to us.
Well, tonight, I shouldn't have to sell the North to your audience. I think that a lot of them will be Northerners themselves. And the fact of the matter is this is a great place to invest. We already have seen £60 billion worth of private and public sector investment in recent years. And that is now putting us in a place where we're expanding our railways, we're bringing more and more jobs, we're leading the way globally when it comes to green energy. And the opportunity is massive. And what we're saying to investors is, look, come on board now, get on board on the ground, and those who do will benefit from it.
Clearly, change takes a long time to take effect. Do you worry whether planning changes, for example, have gone far enough when we see the decades-long delays on a project like HS2 and the ongoing questions about whether there are more delays to come?
Look, I think that in recent days, we've all seen the impact of what slow change can do. It breeds distrust and it makes people in this country feel like they're not being listened to. So I want to see things happen quicker. And that's one of the pitches of the mayors of the North is we want to bring more powers down to regional levels so that we can make those decisions quicker about things like planning, so we can get on and build and grow and create jobs and really showcase the North in the way that it should be. So, of course, I think those things are always a concern. But what we have seen is there's a real appetite from investors to come along today. We've got over 400 people attending to look at what the North has to offer. And that is heartening. It's something that shows that the North is where it's at when it comes to people wanting to be part of our Northern story.
Do you think that Andy Burnham is the right person to lead the country, or is it just a case that it'd be good to have him in Westminster alongside Keir Starmer?
Well, Andy Burnham has to win that seat in Makerfield first. The people of that constituency have got a decision to make in this by-election. I want to see him win. I think he's been a great mayor. I think he would be a great prime minister, but that's not where we are at the moment. There's a long way to go, and he's got a fight on his hands. You know, Reform are flooding the streets. They're terrified of Andy Burnham, and he can see that. And so I want to get behind him to win that by-election, and then we'll see what happens next.
You want him to be in Parliament with a view to challenging Keir Starmer for the leadership?
Look, that's going to be a question for Andy Burnham. But where we are now, we have to respect the voters of Makerfield who have got a big decision to make. And I'm backing Andy all the way to win that seat, to get back into Parliament. And part of that is that I do want to see this change in the way the country is run. That's part of what our Great North Summit's about. We want more power to be devolved to the region so we can make more of our own decisions closer to where people live, which I think helps people to feel more engaged in their politics and takes away some of that distrust that we're seeing.
Do you think that articulating a position of potentially rejoining the EU in years to come would lead to voters using that phrase you just said, distrust?
I think that it's a live conversation. The conversation about the EU. Things have changed significantly since Brexit, particularly our defence position. But I don't think that this by-election or what's going on at the moment is a referendum on Brexit. I think we've got to have a sensible conversation about our relationship with the EU. And what I don't want is for that to drown out the positive arguments that are being made about how we can bring more power to the north, how we can bring that trust back into politics, how we can take that Brexit phrase, take back control, and make it really mean something to the people of our regions by giving them control of more of their own decisions. I think that is where we should be basing the conversation. I think if we end up in a rabbit hole about something that happened 10 years ago, then we're unlikely to have a positive outcome from that discussion.
Kim McGuinness, thanks so much for joining us. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Now let's talk climate change, shall we? Because sucking carbon dioxide out of the air, sticking it underground, key strategy to try and tackle climate change.
But we've spoken to residents in Merseyside about their fears of a new CO2 pipeline and the potential for deadly gas leaks. Our science correspondent Thomas Moore has the story.
Who's this? What have we got here? Can you take a ring off?
Spotty.
Spotty? Which one?
When Chris moved with his growing family to the Wirral near Liverpool 3 years ago, he never imagined he'd be on the front line of a new net zero battle. A planned pipeline carrying 3 million tonnes of carbon dioxide a year from polluting industries will pass close to his house. It's part of the government's plans to tackle climate change, but he fears a rupture in the pipe would spread a suffocating cloud of the gas.
It will push the oxygen out of the way. It will sit and hang around just above the ground, a few metres deep. If that would happen at night time, it being an asphyxiant, that's really quite a risk.
It happened 4 years ago in Mississippi.
911. My friend, she's laying on the ground and she's shaking. She's kind of drooling out of the mouth. I don't know if she's having a seizure or not.
When emergency crews arrived, they found a high-pressure carbon dioxide pipeline had burst. White ice coated the ground. 45 people were taken to hospital. 200 were evacuated. We tracked down Jack. He coordinated the emergency response.
When I got on scene, it was an eerie sight. I describe it as something from a zombie apocalypse. The town is completely evacuated. There's vehicles just abandoned in the street. There's like an eerie chemical smell in the air. It was a strange, eerie sight. In my 35 years of emergency service, it was definitely one of the most unique sites I'd ever been on once I got there.
Well, Thomas is with us to discuss it further, and you can scan the QR code coming your way to watch his full report. Thomas, how big a sort of portion of the pie of all the things we've got planned in the decades ahead is carbon capture and storage?
Oh, it's going to be huge in the years to come. The whole idea of net zero is you reduce carbon production as much as possible. And for those industries like cement, lime, aviation, where you can't stop all the carbon, you have to do something else with it. And that's either planting trees to absorb it, or you bury it in old gas gas fields like Morecambe Bay. Now, just to cover the carbon produced by cement and lime in this country, you're talking about hundreds of millions of trees every year. And you can see how that will quickly displace farmland, the growing need for houses and so on. So trees aren't a solution. They're looking for some other way of burying this carbon, 3 million tonnes a year, underneath Morecambe Bay.
Is it seen as something that's very efficient and we do even without these targets? Or is it something that's sort of seen as quite arbitrary? We have to do it just to meet a target? Because I guess you could move to an area where some things that are energy intensive might not themselves have to be net zero as long as the rest of the country is.
Net zero means your total. As a UK, we have to reach a net balance of zero. So whatever we can't reduce, we have to mitigate it in some way. There is now so much carbon in the atmosphere that adding every extra tonne is just going to create further temperature rises in the years to future. There is climate change already baked in, so the feeling of scientists is that you have to reduce that to zero.
What happens? I mean, I feel it's a bit like if you have to tidy your room and you just get everything off the floor and just shove it in a cupboard, shut the door and then hope it doesn't fall out again. I mean...
So we know that natural gas is buried underneath the North Sea, for example, and it's safely locked away, and we tap it, we bring it to the surface. We're reversing the process with carbon capture and storage. We pump it underground. When that gas field is full of carbon dioxide now, you cork it, you plug it, and
but it just stays there forever.
Yeah, it stays there for a very, very long time. Geological timescales is the belief.
Wow.
Very, very interesting. Thomas, great stuff. Thanks so much, as ever, for a report on the Sky News website.
Now, 4 crew members have safely ejected after a pretty terrifying jet crash that happened during an air show at a military base in Idaho. We can see that moment there. I mean, luckily...
All 4 crew members ejected and safely.
All 4 crew members
look at their
safe.
ejection there. Gosh, you could think that it wasn't far from the ground. That is unbelievable footage. And all 4 managed to eject without either hitting each other or hitting the other plane there, despite the collision being, only moments earlier.
Yeah, so this is an airbase. 2 US Navy fighter jets colliding mid-air in Idaho, and then the authorities then placed the whole of the Mountain Home Air Force Base under lockdown, cancelled the remainder of the event, unsurprisingly, given the images that you can see. According to local media reports, the aircraft involved 2 EA-18G Growler fighting jets taking part in this demonstration near a base, and they came down around 2 miles outside the airbase. But the good news, and you can see the parachutes there on your screen, all 4 crew members ejecting safely.
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be talking about the power of a good book. We'll be chatting to the author Matt Haig about the rise of anxiety disorders, but positive impacts that come from therapeutic novels. We'll be right back.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you? Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They will be allowed to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
...is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more.
Well, let's kick off.
And make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs?
He's coming out! What more do you need?
Welcome back. We're talking mental health next and the different ways we can find comfort and look after ourselves, whether it's getting enough fresh air or losing yourself in a good book.
Well, the author of the highly popular therapeutic novel, The Midnight Library, is continuing his work to help people find comfort through reading by releasing a second escapist tale. We're pleased to say the author and campaigner Matt Haig joins us now in the studio. It's great to have you with us. You've spoken so openly about mental health, and obviously your books touch on it so much as well. Just talk us about your latest book.
The Midnight Train, which, as its title suggests, is linked to another book I wrote called The Midnight Library. And this is a book about life. It's a book about a man at the end of his life who finds himself on a train station, and he goes back through his entire life from his childhood through different struggles in his life, love story, and he wants to step off the train, basically, and change regrets and do things differently. And it's about, you know, what you would do differently, basically, if you could have the chance.
We used the term there, a therapeutic novel. Where does that term come from? Did you design your first book to be a therapeutic novel? Is that how people have reacted to it after the case?
Yeah, you just write the book you want to write, and you write the book that, you know, you would want to read yourself. And those sort of things are just sort of like terms that other people put on them. I'd say in recent years, possibly my books have taken a sort of more therapeutic leaning, but originally that wasn't the case. So I think it's just about where you are in your life. And obviously I've written openly about my own personal sort of mental health issues, and even in the fiction that sort of comes through, not just about depression but about recovery, about addiction and all those sort of issues.
I mean, and I'll obviously be guided by you and how much you want to talk about and all that kind of thing, but you have spoken so powerfully about your own mental health journey, and I just wondered, you know, if you might be able to share a little bit of what happened to you, because you took yourself to the edge of a cliff.
Yeah, I literally, nearly died at the age of 24. I was very convinced I wouldn't make it to the age of 25. As a young man, I had lots of issues. There was alcohol involved, drugs involved, addiction issues, and then I had a full-blown breakdown at the age of 24. It took me about 3 or 4 years of being very ill before I got better. I was agoraphobic, diagnosed with panic disorder, depression. I was on various medications, and, you know, I started writing literally because I couldn't leave the house. You know, I was that ill at that point where I couldn't have gone to do an office job. So, writing was part of my recovery, it was part of my journey, and, it took me a long time before I could publicly talk about it, write about it. But yeah, I do believe there's a massive link between writing and therapy. I mean, if you think about what therapy is, it's basically words. It's people talking or writing. And I think when you go through any experience, whether it's grief, whether it's depression, that's so sort of profoundly powerful, it can at the time feel sort of beyond words, and it's very sort of a personal thing. So I think putting it into words somehow lightens it, shares it, makes it feel more manageable.
It's really interesting hearing you take that. I mean, in terms of your advice to others, not everyone's got a book in them, I guess is my point, to get through this process. So I don't know what the sort of tangible lessons are for everyone, other than, of course, reading the book, which clearly many people find therapeutic.
Well, I think just sharing your story. I mean, I, as a young man, I had a lot of stigma about my own experience, and I think young men and a lot of people in general have a lot of self-stigma about mental illness. We like to feel like we're in control of ourselves, and then you're told you have depression or and it's scary. But all I would say is everything that I was worried about, you know, about going public, about talking, about telling people about mental, you know, a lot of it doesn't happen. And even if people are judging you, then that acts as a kind of filter as who you would want to be surrounded by in your own life. So, I mean, I don't think the lesson is necessarily write a book, but it's definitely, once you start to share things, it becomes easier, and it helps other people to share it too.
I love that idea about it being a filter. You know, if you are the kind of person who has a problem with this, well, is that someone you want in your life, right?
Yeah, exactly. And also, you know, it can feel very lonely, mental illness, and going through something like that. So once you start to share, it's very often the case that someone else will share an experience back. It might not be the same experience you've had, but it's another personal thing to them. So opening up is a way to feel less alone.
Yeah.
When you've heard from people who've read the first book, maybe the second book now, that fall under this category, and it's helped them on their own journey, it must be very rewarding for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I struggled with that at the start because the first book that sort of made me a bit more prominent was Reasons to Stay Alive, which is very much about my personal thing. And as someone who's not a doctor, not a therapist, I struggled to know what my role was. But I think people just like the ability to see themselves. So if you're writing about an experience, they're not necessarily after answers, they're just after a feeling that they're understood.
Yeah, it's that loneliness that you speak of as well. It makes a lot of sense, I have to say. And you know, if you look at the suicide stats, we talk about it quite a lot, don't we? It's so stark, the number of men in particular who are, you know, finding themselves at this moments of crisis.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking right now at, I think, the highest statistics for all genders since the 90s, and you know, rising rates among women too, across all kinds of mental illnesses. So yeah, we're still in the midst of a mental health crisis.
Can I ask you about neurodivergency as well? Because I believe I'm right in saying that you've been diagnosed with ADHD and autism. How important do you think it is for people to get a correct diagnosis, or are you one of these people who thinks actually we're having an overdiagnosis at the minute?
I don't think there's been an overdiagnosis. Obviously, like all things, there's probably cases of misdiagnosis, but I still think there's a lot of people out there who don't necessarily know what they've got. So I think that's the other side of it. I think a lot of the talk about overdiagnosis gets very politicised, and I think it's partly because it's a new thing and people are coming to terms with it. I think we're in an age where people are starting to understand themselves across mental health and neurodivergency a bit more, so we're seeing things a lot more. I don't think it's necessarily a case that people are getting overdiagnosed. I think there's just a sort of new understanding.
Matt, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Good to see you.
Great to have you. Thank you. Thank you. When it comes to mental health, novels are my thing. You know, like people talk about going for a run or, you know, whatever it is, try and help them boost their mood or to change stuff up. For me, it's reading that does it, I have to say. Get lost in a good story. It's true.
To Greece now, where NATO's biggest ever special forces exercise in Europe is taking place.
So European countries are looking to beef up their defences, not just, of course, to counter Russia, but also to prepare for potentially less American support. It's something that numerous presidents have warned about, and, of course, those warnings have ramped up under Donald Trump as well. Here's our Security and Defence Editor, Deborah Haynes.
I'm in the midst of NATO's biggest ever special forces exercise in Europe. Here, soldiers are parachuting into Greece, where they've been told that up to 100 enemy forces have infiltrated the area, posing threats, launching sabotage attacks, cyber attacks. The soldiers are going to have to move forward. They won't be doing it for real in this exercise, but their job is to work out the scale of the threat and whether this is the start of a much bigger invasion.
Bottom line up front, it provides us a unique opportunity to train together, get stronger together, and ultimately fight together.
Do you feel ready for war?
Yes, of course. This is exactly the reason and the purpose and the end state we are trying to reach.
We've watched several waves of jumps. Soldiers from Greece, from North Macedonia, from Switzerland, not a NATO country, and also from Albania, jumping down, landing. We're in the maritime part of the exercise. We're off the coast of Athens. There's an American C-130 aircraft flying overhead. American and Greek special forces are going to be jumping out of that plane. You can see them exiting now. They are on a mission to join up with two boats that were pushed out of the aircraft on a previous rotation a couple of minutes ago. This is part of a 10-day exercise that's taking place across 10 nations, from here in the Mediterranean to the Black Sea to the Baltic Sea. The fact that American special forces make up a third of the forces that are being used as part of this exercise really underlines the vital role that the US is playing in NATO deterrence and defence at a time when Donald Trump is actually threatening to withdraw the footprint of US forces in the alliance. There is a lot of concern amongst European allies about what happens to them and their defences should that take place, which again is why exercises like this are clearly so important. You're jumping with the Americans tonight. Like, what's it like working with them?
Just like working with any other people. I feel very close to them, yes.
And do you think, obviously, I'm not asking you a political question, but do you think you'd be able to do this without the Americans?
Yes, of course. Of course.
The intent is to prepare the special forces of NATO to be ready to spearhead, to defend territory here from hostile attacks under the threshold of an all-out invasion that, of course, would be an Article 5 moment.
Deborah Haynes there for us.
Now we're talking Brexit again this morning. Don't worry, you haven't lost yourself in a time warp. The reason we're doing it is because it's suddenly elbowed its way into the potential leadership contest, because over the weekend, Wes Streeting called for the UK to rejoin the EU.
Yeah, it didn't so much elbow its way in as Wes Streeting
pushed it in. Yeah.
Now, it's given rise to lots of old arguments about the economic benefits or not of Brexit. So here is the take of our business correspondent, Paul Kelso.
Wes Streeting says the UK should rejoin the European Union, that Brexit's been a catastrophic mistake and rejoining will rebuild our economy and trade. It's a political pitch based on an economic assumption that things can only get better if we rejoin. But absent a time machine, it might not be that straightforward. First question, have things got worse? The answer by most economic consensus is yes. Since the Brexit vote, there have been various independent assessments, all of them showing a negative impact on GDP. The OBR said that productivity would decline by 4% by 2035. The Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development said GDP would decline 5% by 2030, and the US National Bureau of Economic Research by 6 to 8% by last year. How do things actually look today? Well, relatively good if you only look at the most recent data. GDP for the first quarter of this year makes the UK the fastest growing economy in the G7. Some Brexiteers have claimed this as proof that the doom-mongering was, well, just that. Now, take the timeline back a little, though, to pre-pandemic, and you see UK GDP has underperformed the Eurozone. Now, disentangling Brexit from the massive economic shocks that followed the pandemic, the Ukraine war, now Iran, is hard. Would the UK have been immune had we still been in the EU? Well, no. But were we more exposed because we chose to make a fundamental change to our most important economic relationship just before these generational challenges hit? Well, yes. Now, the EU was and remains our largest single trading partner, 41% of exports last year. That share has declined a bit. Now, the US is our largest single country trading partner at 22%. Then comes China at 3%, and then scores of smaller relationships that make up the other third of trade. Now, one of the claimed benefits of Brexit was the freedom to do trade deals with these countries, and there have been some with Australia, New Zealand and Japan, each worth less than 0.1% to GDP, though, and India a little more than that. Now, every little helps, but none of those are game-changing. The great prize for Leavers was a trade deal with the US, but that hasn't happened, and since Donald Trump's second term, barriers have gone up, not come down. Last year, Keir Starmer did do a narrow deal on beef, ethanol, steel cars and pharmaceuticals, but it's not legally binding and it's subject to presidential whim. The Prime Minister does now want to move closer to the EU. The King's speech includes a bill to increase food and drink trade by removing checks and accepting EU standards. Now, immigration loomed large in the Brexit debate a decade ago with promises it would decline. This is what actually happened. EU migration, the red line here, did go down, but non-EU numbers soared. A huge wave of legal migration now in decline, but it's an even bigger political issue now than it was then. It's highly unlikely the EU would hand back the same favourable terms on which we left, and freedom of movement is likely to be non-negotiable. The success or failure of Brexit was always going to be about what governments chose to do with it, and the same is likely to apply to rejoining. Now, one final chart that might explain why Wes Streeting is raising the spectre of Europe now. Polling shows that nearly 60% of people think leaving was a mistake, though tellingly Andy Burnham is not supporting a return as he fights a by-election in a Leave voting seat. What appetite there is to reopen the Brexit debate in the country beyond the Labour leadership campaign, well, that's another question entirely.
Paul Kelso there for us.
Well, the new Director General of the BBC has arrived at work. This is Matt Britton walking into the building. No tie, interesting. But, I mean, he's got an absolutely huge in tray. So he is a former president of Google in Europe. He's also a former Great Britain World Rowing bronze medalist, perhaps, though, taking on the most difficult job of his career so far. Let's have a listen to what he said on his first day at work.
I've just had a really strong coffee and a deep breath, and I'm about to walk through those doors as the new Director General. I'm really honoured to be doing that and humbled to take the role. I'm also very aware how complicated, uncertain and fast-changing the world is, and I think when I look at the 100-year history of the BBC, how it's served its audiences, how it's adapted at pace and it's risen in times of crisis, I also believe that today the world needs the BBC more than ever, here in the UK and around the world, for today and for tomorrow. And I look forward to listening and learning and leading with many colleagues to serve the audiences into the future. So I'm time to get started. Thanks very much.
Director General, Dr.
I mean, big, tough task. Lots on the in tray, and clearly, to state the obvious, the BBC have gone for a very forward-looking option. He's come completely from the private sector, completely of his whole career at Google, and I think that says a lot, actually, in terms of just what they hope he can achieve. Yeah, it's an ambitious appointment, and he was clearly trying to get the message across that, you know, it's a big job, but he's up for the challenge. So we'll see how it all shakes down over the days and weeks. Yeah, good luck. Exactly. Let's have a look at the weather next.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News Weather.
So the weather warms up and settles down by the end of the week, with temperatures expected to reach the low to mid-20s Celsius. A big contrast, of course, with recent temperatures, which have been much lower than average for the time of year. For now, though, conditions remain unsettled, with showers spreading eastward across the UK mainland, merging to give some longer spells of rain. Eastern counties will have a mostly dry, bright start to the day, along with Scotland and Northern Ireland. Increasing cloud and stronger winds across the Republic of Ireland will bring rain by the middle of the day.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
As you can see, Jackie's here because we'll have the sport next with a great British victory.
Do you know what? It was a great news story overnight. It happened while most people were sleeping, but Aaron Rai has become the first Englishman to win the PGA Championship in over 100 years. And if you had a little flutter on him before it started, you could have got 100 to 1. Ooh.
People that pod together, they have a little hive brain going on.
They've not had a good week. I've had a good week. There's a teaser there, a teaser.
Oof. OK, nothing to see here. Drama over.
Full stop.
Anyway, we'll get to that. She will be mortified.
She's the first female chancellor. I popped upstairs, made myself a cheese sandwich, and now I'm with you.
Annalise has come dressed in the magenta of electoral dysfunction. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Big stories don't always come from big cities. I'm Lisa Dowd and I'm Sky's Midlands correspondent.
You are not getting in this elevator, OK?
The judge made it very clear that she could see no justifiable reason why Sakulas wasn't here facing British justice.
I promised I would get him justice.
Free, wherever you get your news. This is what they're up against. The wind is the really big problem. It is back-breaking work and the smoke is thick. It's been working well. Water levels are dropping, but no one knows what impact further rain will have. What would you do if this place wasn't open? This is the exact spot in Nottingham where their 19-year-old son, Barnaby Webber, lost his life.
I just think it's so cruel and so harsh.
It's really scary. We're terrified.
In this community, I'm told that everybody knows someone affected by COVID.
Hopefully this will be the last wave.
Sky News gets the full story first. Change seems tantalisingly close in this corner of the UK. Wales was the first to introduce the plastic bag charge. It's legal to let go. Set the speed and take the hands off. It's almost driverless, but not quite. Hands is a highly trained police dog. The force is incredible. It's really frightening, actually. This is my patch, my specialism. It's also my home.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting.
The whole neighborhood is rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.
Time for the sport. Jackie's here with that, and we kick off with the golf.
It was great. It was, probably very unexpected that Aaron Rai was going to win his first major last night, but he did in Pennsylvania, probably while a lot of his friends back home were sleeping, and he tore up the back nine of that course so brilliantly. Now, if you don't know anything about him, he's 30, he's from Wolverhampton, he wears 2 gloves because when he was growing up practising, it was cold. He covers all of his golf clubs because when he was young, there wasn't much money in his house, and he got 1 set and 1 set only, and he had to make them last. So his dad protected all of the irons as well as his drivers, which he still does. And he said in his press conference afterwards, he was asked how he was going to celebrate. I think he won about 2.6 million. He said, well, I'll probably just stop on the way and just get a burrito. Go to Chipotle, I like it.
Go wild.
Absolutely bonkers. But it was brilliant how he did it because a lot of golfers really struggled with that course last night. Let's have a look. So this was the moment where you thought, OK, he's in this. He was 3 behind with 10 to play. He had a 40-foot eagle at the 9th, which pushed him right up the leaderboard. It was a very congested leaderboard. And honestly, there were so many people who could have won this in the end. He then turned in 4 birdies on the back 9, including this really difficult putt on the 17th. And this, I think he would have known when this went in, he was going to win because it was very difficult. All the commentators were flagging how difficult it was, but straight in the hole.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, under pressure as well, which meant that on the 18th he could take 2 putts, which he did, and just finish it all off. He finished 5 under for the day with a 65. 3 clear, brilliant performance, and just paid tribute to all his family afterwards.
People that come to my mind are my mom, my dad, my siblings, my wife. There's absolutely so much that goes into this. My coaches who were with me since I was 10 years old, my sponsor, Shabir Randari, who's been with me since I was 8 years old, that there's an absolute team of people that go into just even having the opportunity to play professionally.
And not to not do him credit, but this, judging by the odds you mentioned beforehand, 100 to 1, it completely came out of nowhere.
Well, yeah, but after his first round, I think, obviously they came right down. But I don't think, if you were naming who's going to win it, people would have gone Rory. John Ram was second, maybe John Ram, but, not him. Well done.
Yeah.
Relegation dogfight. We're very, very, very into the closing stages of this now. And I think, what happened to West Ham yesterday at Newcastle, I don't know if you watched that match, they lost 3-1. It needed to be really good from West Ham. It really wasn't. They gifted Newcastle 2 goals. It was a very sort of lame start to the match when they needed to be fighting for their Premier League lives. And it just didn't come off. They fought in the end, but it was too little, too late. It leaves Spurs really needing just a point because their goal difference is so much better when they go to Chelsea on Tuesday. If they get a point, it's all over. Nuno Espirito Santo was so kind of apologetic afterwards, but it does look like it's kind of done and dusted. for West Ham. And I don't know if you saw United's match yesterday. We still haven't had Michael Carrick officially announced as the official manager of Manchester United, but they beat Forest 3-2. But there was another VAR controversy. It was a handball. It hits Mboma's hip and arm, and then Cunha scores the goal. It went to VAR. The referee didn't go with the VAR, just said, no, I'm sticking with my original decision. The goal stands. And none of the pundits could understand it. And it's basically come to the point where no one really understands VAR decisions, doesn't understand the handball rule, when is it going to be a goal or not a goal. I mean, Alan Shearer and Gary Neville just called this decision a shocker. And for Gary Neville to call a Man United goal,
no, it's bad.
You kind of know it's very bad.
It's like you said, it's the lack of consistency. And then I think that you end up kind of undermining the authority of the ref on the pitch as well, right? And in this case, obviously, he stood by his decision. But then you're kind of like, well, why did he stand by his decision when in all the other VARs, they normally, if you go and look at it, then it's about to be overturned.
You know if it gets called to VAR, oh, this is going to be chalked off, but it wasn't. We should mention the Red Roses yesterday, who won the Six Nations. It was a brilliant performance against France, in Bordeaux, an 8th successive Six Nations win. And you'll probably think, well, they win everything, they won the World Cup, why wouldn't they win it? Except 11 players from that World Cup final didn't play in that match yesterday.
Wow.
They've got tons of injuries. They've got players out who are pregnant. And it was a lot of young players who had to come in and really step up. And that was a challenge, and they rose to the challenge. Very good. And Yannick Sinner, we should mention as well, who yesterday won the Italian Open, which means that he's won all 9 of the Masters on offer. And the only other man who's ever done that is Novak Djokovic.
Wow, what an achievement.
That is how good he is. He's 24 as well.
It's a baby.
He's just a baby.
Jackie, great stuff. Thanks very much. That does it for the sport. We'll be right back after this.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you? Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back. Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They'll be all out to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock. Welcome to Mornings with Rich and Frost.
Get that in the show right. We're Sophie and Wilf. Good morning from both of us today. Let's get to it.
The Justice Secretary tells us that the Prime Minister will not be setting out a timetable for a departure from number 10 as his leadership contenders pull focus.
Donald Trump says the clock is ticking for Iran as talks to bring the war to an end appear to stall.
The warning that Britain's dementia care is in denial and regret, saying patients are being missed at every stage.
Also, we'll be discussing what do you think would make the UK a better place to live? We'll speak to one playwright, James Graham, trying to answer that question.
And in sport, England's Aaron Rai storms to a maiden major title after completing a 3-shot victory in the PGA Championship.
Good morning. We've learned today the Prime Minister will not be setting out a timetable for leaving number 10. That's what his Justice Secretary David Lammy told us this morning.
Comes after another of his ministers, Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy, told Sky News that it would have to be a personal decision for Sir Keir on whether or not he steps down. Here's what the Deputy PM and Justice Secretary told us this morning.
Let me be really clear. Keir Starmer remains the most resilient person I know in my life. I spoke to him twice yesterday. He has a strength of character, a fighting experience. There will be no timetables. What there is getting on with the business of government, really crystal clear about that. At the moment, there is no contest. What there is his determination to deliver for the people, British people, accelerate the pace over the coming months, much to do.
So just to be crystal clear, no timetable for departure set out by Keir Starmer?
There will be no timetable for departure.
So that's clear. I think we can absolutely say now Keir Starmer is going to be fighting, at least, of course, until that Makerfield by-election. But, of course, you know, if Andy Burnham wins there, a leadership challenge is inevitable. It could almost become a coronation for the Manchester mayor. If he wins in Makerfield. Because, look, these guys are going to do everything they can to stop it happening. Reform swept all the council wards in the area. Applications for their candidate have now shut. We'll be hearing who it's going to be later on this week. Labour applications for a candidate close at midday today. I mean, look, you'd have to be pretty brave, wouldn't you, to go up against Andy Burnham. And then, of course, polling day, we're expecting on the 18th of June. I cannot think, genuinely, of a by-election with more significance than this one. Almost, you know, a referendum on who you want to lead the country is going to have some extraordinarily stark consequences, whoever wins.
And unbelievably, the other thing to come out of the interview this morning that Sophie did with David Lammy is Lammy saying he will be there to campaign on behalf of Andy Burnham. Kind of unfathomable that we are where we are.
Yeah, you're kind of through the looking glass a bit, aren't you? There's kind of two parallel political universes going on. There's one where you very clearly have a sort of shadow leadership campaign playing out between Wes Streeting and Andy Burnham. And then there's the other, when David Lammy is saying, we need to stop this nonsense. We can't have 10 weeks of this. We've had 10 days of it. We need to be getting on with the job. And that was what he told you when he spoke to you earlier. I thought, you know, he sounded a bit frustrated by everything that's going on, if you want to have a listen.
Let's step back. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. I thought that the Labour Party, over the last 10 days, had a spectacular own goal after those local election results. We now need to unite and pull together. We have a by-election to fight. We need to remember our responsibilities as a government. We are not in opposition. We have the levers of power.
I mean, it sounds like you're kind of frustrated. Was it right that you were kind of like calling around colleagues, trying to get them to, you know, rein it in, back the government? Did you have a few frank conversations?
None of us can have been immune to ordinary British people looking in at the Westminster bubble, seeing infighting and briefing and being turned off, when actually what they want is a government getting on with improving their lives.
And he's been making a similar point in other interviews this morning, basically saying, look, Wes Streeting is no longer in government. He's allowed to have these debates. Andy Burnham's not in government. He can talk about what he wants. These are not sixth-form debates, he said. We need to get on with governing.
I asked him, I mean, you mentioned there about how we're going through the looking glass, and I think that is basically the perfect way of putting this by-election. The other question I asked David Lammy, which I'm still not clear on, is if you quite like Keir Starmer, who should you vote for? You know, because it's almost like the anti-Labour candidate is the Labour candidate. The whole thing I find is extraordinary.
Yeah, I mean, Andy Burnham, judging by the interviews this weekend, you know, he's running as the change candidate here, which is bizarre given, you know, he is the Labour candidate and he's the Labour government candidate, but it's not bizarre given we know that if he becomes the MP, I imagine a leadership challenge or maybe even a coronation might follow quite quickly. So, yeah, I think we are just... It is born out of Keir Starmer's fundamentally incredibly weak political position that we find ourselves in this bind because he was not able to block Andy Burnham. It sailed through the NEC, and that's why we are in this bizarre situation where we are. It is born out of the damage done to Keir Starmer in the last 7 to 10 days, and that is why, for all of David Lammy saying this is just 10 days of nonsense that we need to get over, that last 10 days has changed things. It has made it completely terminal for Keir Starmer. And even if he's not going to be setting out a timetable right now, or even after that by-election, someone will be setting it out for him.
Do we then have to have a new election for Manchester Mayor?
Yes. I think it's 7 weeks. So he doesn't have to stand down until and unless he gets elected. So presumably if he loses, he can carry on. Going. And then I think it's 35 working days after you'll have to have another election. And then, of course, I think even if Andy Burnham takes Makerfield, Reform will really be fancying their chances at the Greater Manchester mayoralty. But I think Labour will be thinking very hard about what candidates they put in there as well.
I mean, the whole thing. I mean, imagine if he loses Makerfield and then stays on as mayor. I mean, it's going to be very awkward, isn't it?
I mean, you presume that's end of political... You know, he'll do 2 more years and then sort of slip off into the night, I guess.
Yeah.
Fascinating stuff, as always, Rob. Great stuff. Thank you. Now, President Trump has issued a renewed warning to Iran after speaking to Benjamin Netanyahu.
So he was posting on Truth Social and he said, for Iran, the clock is ticking and they better get moving fast or there won't be anything left of them. Time is of the essence. And reports do suggest that the US and Israel are undergoing the most intense preparations for renewed attacks against Iran since the ceasefire was agreed last month. And look, this is a potentially huge deal because we've had the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. What we haven't had is a return to the attacks, right? And I think that is what people are very worried about as well. The President and the Israeli Prime Minister talked on the phone earlier today. They spoke about Iran, according to an Israeli official. The oil's up again a bit today. It's 110 now. On Brent, it's up about 1%. It built a bit last week, particularly at the end of the week, I think mainly because the US-China meetings didn't lead to any kind of clear impetus to de-escalate things. In fact, as we just said, there's talk of worse over the weekend. UK bond yields, rather encouragingly, are sort of stable this morning because there's a lot of pressure on them, not just from the war, not just from the political situation here, but from other global bond markets, Japan in particular, where yields are rising a lot. So, relatively speaking, the fact that we're not rising again today is a very small positive, though, of course, have risen quite a lot in recent weeks already. Yeah, certainly have. I just want to talk to you now briefly about the justice reforms that the government are enacting this morning, because these are actually quite significant. We spoke to the Justice Secretary, David Lammy, about his plans to shake up the youth justice system. So this is all about trying to stop so many young people starting a life of crime, but it also, interestingly, includes getting tougher on parents. They currently allow parents and guardians to be compelled to address children's behaviour through counselling and guidance or to face fine, but the repercussions could get tougher. And we asked David Lammy whether a parent could even go to jail for a crime that their child committed.
Well, in extremis, that is available to a judge. I would expect that would be used incredibly rarely. But it would effectively mean that you've been negligent in not flagging stuff up or not supporting your child, and that's an offence. Parenting orders have sat on the statute books for years. They are not routinely being used by judges. The only thing a judge can do really is offer a fine. What parents of these kinds of children need is proper support. For example, if they themselves have an alcohol or a drug addiction, if they themselves are experiencing their own issues with, say, depression, they need to be able to be there for their child who's obviously offending.
Now, a charity is warning dementia care in the UK is stuck in a system of delay, denial and neglect.
The Alzheimer's Society says people are waiting almost 3.5 years for a diagnosis after first showing symptoms. Barnaby's here with all of the key takeaways from this report from the Alzheimer's Society.
It's a pretty damning report, I think, from the Alzheimer's Society on the state of dementia care in the UK at the moment. As you just said, the report has found there is a 3.5-year average wait from when somebody first displays symptoms of dementia to getting that diagnosis. And that is leading to, in the words of the report, people falling through the cracks, people not getting the health support, the financial support that they're entitled to. In fact, the report found that 1 in 5 people with a dementia diagnosis didn't receive any support at all. In the words of the report, that led to families being essentially released into the wild, so told to deal with this without any support from the health service. They also say that there are no national targets for early dementia diagnosis, and that's what the Alzheimer's Society are calling for, national targets, so this can be properly tracked. The reason I think that is so important is because of the sheer numbers of people who are living with dementia in the UK currently. About 1 million people. That is a figure expected to rise to 1.4 million by 2040. So that is why the Alzheimer's Society is calling for action on this. Of course, the government say they are investing in research and care as part of their 10-year plan for the NHS. But this charity clearly thinks more needs to be done quicker.
Finally, great stuff. Thank you.
Got a little bit of breaking news to bring you now, and this is concerning the MV Hondius, which of course is the cruise ship that was hit by hantavirus. It is finally going to get to its intended destination, Rotterdam. So it's expected to arrive in Rotterdam, or it is just arriving in Rotterdam now. You can look at those live pictures. For disinfection, Dutch authorities preparing the quarantine arrangements for the 25 crew members and 2 medical staff who are still on board that ship there. So the Hondius there arriving in Rotterdam. It had been carrying, of course, 150 passengers, including people from the United Kingdom as well. 9 people, 9 British nationals, UK citizens connected to the MV Hondius are being transferred to the Arrow Park Hospital in Wirral, Merseyside, to be monitored here in the United Kingdom. Exposed to hantavirus, but no symptoms. And we believe that's the same for the 25 crew members and 2 medical staff remaining on board. They will, of course, be expected to quarantine when they reach Rotterdam.
We're going to take a break here. When we come back, we're going to be talking about border changes across the US ahead of the all-important midterm local elections, equivalent of local elections there coming up in November. We'll be right back.
I urge you not to look away. If Hamas hands the hostages over, they will end this conflict. The world has been watching. Good to see you again. How are you? Did she say how he was?
The conditions are awful.
The jets were ordered to come back.
Historic day here today. How will you respond if India does launch airstrikes?
They will be allowed to war.
I'm just going to put some body armor on. I'm Yalda Hakim.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist... Hi, darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
...is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more. Well, let's kick off and make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs? He's coming out! What more do you need?
Right, lots to talk about this morning with our next guest, the Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party, Matt Vickers, is here. First, I just wondered if you could comment on the government's justice reforms. Do you think it's right that parents should be held responsible for the actions of their kids?
Well, I think it is. I think we're going to wait and see the details and what it means. Nobody out there really thinks that this Labour government is tough on law and order. When we left office, there was a record number of police on our streets, 1,300 less police already. We're seeing them reducing prison sentences, prisoners spending less of their time behind bars, short sentences axed altogether. This government isn't serious about it.
But the question specifically about parents, you know, is there a situation where a parent could go to jail for the crimes of their kid?
I think there should be consequences for parents. The reality is that parents have a responsibility and actually can do a lot more in the home to ensure children don't get on the wrong track. So I think there is a debate to be had in that space. I think there is already measures in place that see families held to account in some ways. Should we be looking at that? Of course we should, but this government, nobody's convinced.
Right, let's talk about this by-election, shall we? Are you going to be out and about campaigning in Makerfield?
We'll be out on the stump. We've had a cracking set of local elections. I've enjoyed getting out there, getting a bit of sun, talking to real people on the streets.
You had a cracking set of local elections?
We did have...
How many seats did you win in Makerfield?
In Makerfield, well, there were very
different results. It was Reform sweeping the board there, wasn't it?
If I'd said to you a year ago that we were going to win back Westminster, that we were going to take control of Wandsworth, that we were going to win in Bexley, Reform's top target, you just said not for the birds. But it happened. Actually, we know we've got a long way to go.
Were you looking at a different set of elections to me? I thought you were down. How many councillors were you up?
So many
you were
of the
up,
elections,
were you? How many councillors did you put on across the board?
It is devastating to lose hard-working councillors. Some very good local councillors. It's devastating for them. It's devastating for the communities that they serve. The reality is that these local elections, some of them, the county council election, last held in 2021. Slightly different world in 2021. We had the vaccine bounce. The Conservative Party was on 43% of the vote. But actually, if you want to really compare it about the progress we are or aren't making, you contrast it with last year. You look at last year, what happened in the local elections this May versus last May? Labour's share of the vote, well, we know what happened there. Reform's share of the vote actually reduced and the Conservative share increased. It's not all good in the hood. There's a lot more to be done.
Good in the hood,
but you come out on the stump with me, Sophie, and you'll hear from people who are impressed with what Kemi's got to say.
The question was on Makerfield, and I want to keep it there, not just because it was such an important set of local elections, because in a way it is a bit of a microcosm of the problem of the Conservative Party, right? Because, you know, it is Reform who are the real opposition to Labour in Makerfield, isn't it?
Not at all. We're going to be putting forward our pitch. The reality is people in Makerfield who want to see the welfare state reduced so the system actually works for people, who want to see the two-child cap put back in place, who want to see energy bills brought down, who want to see business rates scrapped for those small businesses on the high street, who actually want to see stamp duty axed. Those people are going to have a choice on that ballot paper. They can go out there and vote for Kemi Badenoch's Conservatives.
I'm interested to hear a bit more about your own history, because I think it's fair to say you haven't got like a stereotypically Conservative background, right? You know, your mum was a hairdresser, your dad was a bricklayer. You did a whole series of, I guess, what most people would describe as normal jobs before entering Ring Westminster. How did you end up as a Tory?
Well, because I believe that people who work hard and do the right thing, my dad, the builder, my mum and everything she did, I believe those people who work hard and do the right thing deserve a fairer share. What's happening at the moment under this government is you are seeing anybody who works pay more and more in tax, anybody who doesn't work getting more and more in benefits. The values of a government that should actually just get out of the way, let people get on with their lives and get rewards for working hard and doing the right thing. That's kind of what the Conservative Party stands for.
Because I guess the thing that I'm quite interested in is, you know, there'll be a lot of people out there, the same background as your mum and your dad, people with real jobs, as you put it, who are thinking, actually, Reform are the guys for me now. You know, Reform are the ones who are the anti-establishment party. They're on the side of working people.
There is a big dividing line at the next election. The difference between the Conservatives and the other lot is actually about welfare. It's about a system that the welfare bill is ballooning.
Can I ask you? Can you just put the lines to one side?
The lines are to one side.
No. Yeah. But because I kind of mean this kind of genuinely. You know, a lot of people, like your mum and your dad, I mean, I'm sure they'll probably vote for Conservative with you in power. I'd hope so. But hopefully. You know, people from that background, right? The hairdressers, the builders, the bricklayers, they're looking at Nigel Farage and they're thinking, actually, he talks to me more. It's a challenge, isn't it?
Well, the problem is it's easy to do the tweets and the press releases. People want to know that the government is going to balance the books, is going to have real plans about how it's going to not just promise things, but actually deliver on them. And I think that's why Kemi is coming into her own. They've seen a woman who's tough, who's real, who's got backbone. You might not agree with her all the time, but you know where she stands. People need to know that in government. They need to know that government isn't going to just blow money on welfare, blow money on nationalising things. They need to know it's going to be spent properly, and they need to know that if they work hard and do the right thing, the government's on their side.
Are you enjoying the chaos in the Labour Party? Have you got the popcorn out?
I'm slightly saddened by it, actually, in one sense, because when you look at what this government's doing at the moment, people out there, like my mum and dad, are worried about the cost of living. They're worried about crime and antisocial behaviour. They're worried about a whole host of things that are going wrong in this country. The government isn't worried about that at the moment. Keir Starmer, this morning, for the last 6 months, has been worried about how he's going to hold on to the keys to number 10.
To be fair, they've rolled out some policy this morning, though, haven't they, on justice, right? So you might not agree with it, but, you know,
it's not his priority. His priorities are not what my mum and dad are thinking about. His priorities is keeping hold of the keys to number 10. His cabinet's priorities are how they're going to get the keys to number 10. This is a zombie government. It's actually really damaging and sad for the country.
OK, thank you very much indeed. Matt Vickers speaking to us there.
Now let's pivot to the US, where the voting map is being redrawn ahead of crucial midterm elections. Essentially, it means boundaries of constituencies being moved around by the parties in power in each state in order to secure more seats in Congress. Now, it has been done by both parties for decades, but Republicans in Tennessee are being accused of splitting up majority black districts. Now, David Blevins travelled there to try and find out more.
This is an attempt to dilute my vote.
It's called redistricting, and it's redefining America.
It's unconstitutional, it's unfair, and they're trying to suppress the black vote.
Is Donald Trump tearing up civil rights to boost his chances of holding on to power?
This is white supremacy, straight up white supremacy.
To answer that question, we've come to the Deep South, to Memphis, Tennessee. It's the home of the blues, but it's being forced red by the redrawing of election maps in midterm election year. A process that has wiped out the only majority black voting district in this entire state.
I never thought that I would be in a position where I'm fighting for the rights that my grandparents and my great-grandparents already fought for.
Split down the middle. This is Shotwell Street, the latest dividing line in America. 9th District, the only Democratic seat here, has been carved up to benefit Republicans. But it's the only majority black district in Tennessee.
They try to dress it up, that this is about politics and numbers. No, it's about politics and racism.
Voters choose representation. Representatives don't choose voters.
Dr. King was shot at the Lorraine Motel.
They've been here before. This community knows all about struggle. It was here that Martin Luther King gave his last speech and breathed his last breath.
And the shot rang out. Kapow!
District 9 is holy ground to the civil rights movement and to the family of its late leader.
I mean, voting is fundamental to what democracy represents. As it relates to my father, particularly, yes, he was there in Memphis and was gunned down in Memphis. So it is like a devastating blow.
Republicans are winning this battle, making it harder for Democrats to flip the House. But redistricting means much more than politics in a place like this.
Memphis is a 64% black city. It's the blackest city in the entire country. And to combine it with the same district that the Ku Klux Klan was founded in is truly unconscionable.
But there are two sides to this story, so we headed east.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
To the monthly meeting of Republicans in Bolivar, who reject claims of racism.
I think people assume whites are voting one way and blacks are voting another way, and it's not true.
I think everybody's trying to win, and it's gamesmanship now. If you believe you're right and you want to win and do the right thing, you're going to do everything in the world to retain power and win.
Bolivar and Memphis are in the same district now, but they're worlds apart. When the sun goes down in one, the lights come up in the other.
From blues to country to rock and roll, the music of Memphis is its own map of American history. But the city of Elvis, B.B. King and Otis Redding is getting a political makeover, and there's nothing these streets can do about it. This is Donald Trump's town now, and in his quest to hold on to power, it's now or never.
When she's gone, she's gone.
David Blevins, Sky News in Memphis.
Much more still to come here on Mornings. After the break, we're going to be speaking to the writer of Dear England, James Graham, about a new attempt to get a national conversation going about the things that define us and we should be proud of. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Well, you could say that society is fairly divided right now, but what would you think would make the UK a better place to be, a more united place to be? That's a question that the playwright James Graham, amongst others, is trying to answer. He's been advising on the National Conversation Project. I'm delighted to say he joins us now. James, very good morning to you. Welcome back to the programme. Tell us a bit about what this National Conversation is.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I mean, the joy of this actually is I don't have to come up with the answers because I've got no idea. It's about asking other people. So the National Conversation is an attempt to genuinely and sincerely ask people to contribute either by taking a survey or at the end of that survey, leaving a voice note of 1 minute long, where we're asking basically, what do you want for your country? What do you think, based on your honest hopes and fears, or even anxieties, struggles, worries? What do you want your community to be? Because as you said, and this is not an original thought that will surprise anybody, we are suffering a huge collapse in social cohesion and the divisions that are growing ever between us. Often we think of that almost exclusively through the political prism, so the ways in which our politics are dividing to the extremes. But fundamentally, it's even just about human connection. Our social infrastructure in most of the places where we live has collapsed, which means if you can't gather anywhere physically, in a pub, in a leisure centre, in a park, in a youth centre, we're really struggling to connect in a meaningful way. That's what I'm going to be submitting in my voice note. I want us to get together more, but hopefully other people will come up with even better ideas than that.
So do you think we're really sort of lacking a sense of community, possibly at the same time, if we broaden out, of national identity as well?
Without question, and actually, you mentioned the Dear England play and drama. I really admire Gareth Southgate for what his project represented, not just because he wanted to improve the technical performance and the results of the England football team, but if you remember in that letter he wrote to the nation entitled Dear England, he asked questions about how we can get together in more helpful and meaningful ways, how we can unite around a story rather than be divided. This is, when you think of the ways that if we are driven more now to online spaces and digital spheres, we know that algorithmically these social media platforms are more likely to try to generate outrage and funnel us into smaller interests of concern, or a political landscape where there are now sort of 5-6 parties competing for 20% of our vote, and that's totally fine in any democracy. But I worry that means every political party is going to be appealing to their base, defining them against other people rather than what's for people. So these are the challenges that a healthy, engaged, connected community face, and I don't think it's been high enough on the political agenda to talk about it.
I'm really interested, James. You said at the top you don't have to write or pen the answer yourself to this great question that we all face, and it's more surveying what everyone feels. I wonder whether, after we've got everyone's take and we've gathered the views of the nation, whether your skills, whether from you directly or someone else, are sort of needed. Because I guess a great part of this then is communication, not just the oratory, but putting the words together as well, because it can be quite a hard thing to define and capture in an inclusive way as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And part of the crisis, I think, facing this country, if I can be a bit pretentious, is it's a crisis of storytelling. What is the value of a story? The story that we tell ourselves about ourselves is how we can all unite around a vision, a project. And that doesn't exclude differences. It's healthy, obviously, to disagree in a functioning society. But it's how we do that. What is the tone in which we're doing that? Are we disagreeing in good faith in order to arrive at a conclusion, which may mean we're all slightly compromising? But in the lack of, frankly, a national plan, a long-term national plan that we can all get behind over the next 5-10 years, we feel this sense of frustration and paralysis. We lack agency in our lives, which leads to us feeling disappointed and disconnected. So I agree with you. I would happily play my part along with everybody else once this has been taken. So when people go to the nationalconversation.org.uk, there is this survey, but the voice notes are going to be collated by the University of Oxford, and using technology, we hope that there might be some shared patterns and shared visions that might arrive at, as you say, a positive story we might be able to get around.
Just as a sort of shooting off on a tangent, do you think Gareth Southgate will make a good politician?
He makes a better playwright than I am. I think his writing and his ability to tell an incredible story is what defines him as the singularly most positive public figure, I think, of the past decade. When he walked into the dressing room, England men's dressing room, 10 years ago now, what he said was, we need to write a new story for the England football team, and we're all going to write one. He identified that these lads had no sense of belonging with each other as a cohesive unit, or any sort of connection to what it meant to be England. So they went on a massive journey there, did workshops and storytelling lectures, and looked at symbols, as well as obviously focusing on penalties and technique. And it made them, and you saw, I remember that feeling in Russia 2018, they felt like a cohesive unit that were telling one single story. They used to come off the pitch at the end of a match and in the post-match interviews, use phrases like, we're trying to control the narrative, we're trying to tell our own story. And the fact that Gareth identified that, he makes him an incredible storyteller. But I agree with you, I think because of his kindness and decency, he would also make an incredible political leader. I'm sure that is the last thing he probably wants at the moment. But, you know, we certainly need more male role models, that's for sure.
James, great to have you with us. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
James Graham, of course, the legendary playwright there.
Coming up, we are going to be discussing, of course, more about the Makerfield by-election. We just want to bring you these latest pictures from Downing Street. This is Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, leaving for the day ahead. He's going to be talking about the NHS and improving figures on the NHS later today. But, of course, more is going to be to come on the words we got from the Deputy Prime Minister, David Lammy, saying that he is not going anywhere. He's not going to be setting out a timetable for his departure. At least he won't be going anywhere of his own accord.
Let's talk next about carbon capture and storage. It's a technique to try and capture carbon dioxide and put it under the ground to reduce its effect on the atmosphere.
We've spoken to residents in Merseyside, though, about their fears of the new CO2 pipeline and the potential for deadly gas leaks. Our science correspondent Thomas Moore has the story.
Who's this? What have we got here? Can you take a ring off?
Spotty.
Spotty? Which one?
When Chris moved with his growing family to the Wirral near Liverpool 3 years ago, he never imagined he'd be on the front line of a new net zero battle. A planned pipeline carrying 3 million tonnes of carbon dioxide a year from polluting industries will pass close to his house. It's part of the government's plans to tackle climate change, but he fears a rupture in the pipe would spread a suffocating cloud of the gas.
It will push the oxygen out of the way. It will sit and hang around just above the ground, a few metres deep. If that would happen at night time, it being an asphyxiant, that's really quite a risk.
It happened 4 years ago in Mississippi.
911. My friend, she's laying on the ground and she's shaking. She's kind of drooling out of the mouth. I don't know if she's having a seizure or not.
When emergency crews arrived, they found a high-pressure carbon dioxide pipeline had burst. White ice coated the ground. 45 people were taken to hospital. 200 were evacuated. We tracked down Jack. He coordinated the emergency response.
When I got on scene, it was an eerie sight. I describe it as something from a zombie apocalypse. The town is completely evacuated. There's vehicles just abandoned in the street. There's like an eerie chemical smell in the air. It was a strange, eerie sight. In my 35 years of emergency service, it was definitely one of the most unique sights I'd ever been on once I got there.
Well, Thomas joins us now to discuss this more. It's one of those things where you can totally understand people's great fear if it's in your backyard. At the same time, is this a very important, critical part of our attempts to reduce emissions?
So the Independent Climate Change Committee says carbon capture and storage is a necessity, not an option, if we're going to reach net zero. And the scientists would say that we need to do that if we're going to mitigate the impact of all the carbon that's already in the atmosphere. Some climate change is already baked in. So you have to try and stop as much carbon as possible from reaching the atmosphere. Now, you can either do that by reducing the amount of carbon we're emitted from everyday life, or you can take it and deal with it in some other way. You could plant lots of trees to absorb it, or you bury it underground. Now, you would quickly cover a small island like the UK in trees if you were going to try and absorb all the carbon produced by aviation, cement factories and so on. And that's why they do believe burying it under the North Sea or in Morecambe Bay is the best way forward.
I mean, is there a risk of leaks, though? It feels a bit, you know...
Look, I mean, this is a very new technology and the belief is that natural gas is contained within the seabed for millennia, and that if you reverse the process, pump it back down into these empty gas fields and then cap it, you will be able to contain carbon dioxide under pressure. It is another gas. There is the possibility, of course, with seismic activity, you might release it just as you could with natural gas. But that doesn't happen a lot. So the belief is that this would be a perfectly safe way for burying it for geological timescales.
Is there examples of this working very well already in large scale?
Carbon capture and storage they've only just started doing it in Norway. That's being now done on a commercial scale, where they're taking carbon from cement factories and burying it under North Sea. So this is the direction of travel, but the difficulty is that if you're moving it from where it's produced to where it needs to be stored, there is a pipeline, and that can go past people's homes in a place like the UK where we have a lot of houses.
I'm fascinated by all this. You say that they think they can bury it for geological timeframes. What does that mean?
Thousands and thousands
So
of
it
years.
could literally just stay there for thousands of years.
And that's what we would need to do, because every tonne of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is going to be there for hundreds, if not 1,000 years. And that will have a warming impact as that blanket, that greenhouse effect that we talk about. And that's why everything we do now is going to take a long time to turn around this oil tanker that is climate change.
Thomas, great stuff as always. Thanks so much. To Greece now, where NATO's biggest ever special forces exercise in Europe is taking place. European allies are looking to beef up their defences, not only to counter Russia, but to prepare for potentially less American support under President Trump. Here's our defence and security editor, Deborah Haynes.
I'm in the midst of NATO's biggest ever special forces exercise in Europe. Here, soldiers are parachuting into Greece, where they've been told that up to 100 enemy forces have infiltrated the area, posing threats, launching sabotage attacks, cyber attacks. The soldiers are going to have to move forward. They won't be doing it for real in this exercise, but their job is to work out the scale of the threat and whether this is the start of a much bigger invasion.
Bottom line up front, it provides us a unique opportunity to train together, get stronger together, and ultimately fight together.
Do you feel ready for war?
Yes, of course. This is exactly the reason and the purpose and the end state we are trying to reach.
We've watched several waves of jumps, soldiers from Greece, from North Macedonia, from Switzerland, not a NATO country, and also from Albania, jumping down, landing. We're in the maritime part of the exercise. We're off the coast of Athens. There's an American C-130 aircraft flying overhead. American and Greek special forces are going to be jumping out of that plane. You can see them exiting now. They are on a mission to join up with two boats that were pushed out of the aircraft on a previous rotation a couple of minutes ago. This is part of a 10-day exercise that's taking place across 10 nations, from here in the Mediterranean to the Black Sea to the Baltic Sea. The fact that American special forces make up a third of the forces that are being used as part of this exercise really underlines the vital role that the US is playing in NATO deterrence and defence at a time when Donald Trump is actually threatening to withdraw the footprint of US forces in the alliance. There is a lot of concern amongst European allies about what happens to them and their defences should that take place, which again is why exercises like this are clearly so important. You're jumping with the Americans tonight. What's it like working with them?
Just like working with any other people. I feel very close to them, yes.
And do you think, obviously, I'm not asking you a political question, but do you think you'd be able to do this without the Americans?
Yes, of course. Of course.
The intent is to prepare the special forces of NATO to be ready to spearhead, to defend territory here from hostile attacks under the threshold of an all-out invasion that, of course, would be an Article 5 moment.
Deborah Haynes there for us.
Let's have a look now at the weather.
I hope we haven't forgotten anything.
Travel insurance, I tick that box.
Yeah, but remember what you forgot last year.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News Weather.
The weather warms up and settles down by the end of the week, with temperatures expected to reach the low to mid-20 Celsius, a big contrast with the recent temperatures, which have been lower than average for this time of year. For now, though, conditions remain unsettled, with showers spreading eastward across the UK mainland, merging to give some longer spells of rain. Eastern counties will have a mostly dry, bright start to the day, along with Scotland and Northern Ireland, but increasing cloud and stronger winds across the Republic of Ireland will bring rain by the middle of the day.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News Weather.
Jackie's here because we had a great golf story yesterday, didn't we?
I know, kicking football off the sort of top of the table. It's brilliant. Aaron Ray becomes the first English guy to win the PGA Championship in over 100 years, since 2019. So we'll tell you how he did it and why he keeps his golf clubs covered, even though he doesn't have to pay for them anymore.
People that pod together, they have a little hive brain going on. They've not had a good week.
I've had a good week. There's a teaser there, a teaser.
Oof. OK, nothing to see here. Drama over. Full stop. Anyway, we'll get to that. She will be mortified.
Because she's the first female chancellor.
I popped upstairs, made myself a cheese sandwich, and now I'm with you.
Annalise has come dressed in the magenta of electoral dysfunction. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Big stories don't always come from big cities. I'm Lisa Dowd and I'm Sky's Midlands correspondent.
You are not getting in this elevator, OK?
The judge made it very clear that she could see no justifiable reason why Sakulas wasn't here facing British justice.
I promised I would get him justice.
Free, wherever you get your news. This is what they're up against. The wind is the really big problems. It is back-breaking work and the smoke is thick. It's been working well. Water levels are dropping, but no one knows what impact further rain will have. What would you do if this place wasn't open? This is the exact spot in Nottingham where their 19-year-old son, Barnaby Webber, lost his life.
I just think it's so cruel and so harsh.
It's really scary. We're terrified.
In this community, I'm told that everybody knows someone affected by COVID.
Hopefully this will be the last wave.
Sky News gets the full story first. Change seems tantalisingly close in this corner of the UK. Wales was the first to introduce the plastic bag charge. It's legal to let go. Set the speed and take the hands off. It's almost driverless, but not quite. Hans is a highly trained police dog. The force is incredible. It's really frightening, actually. This is my patch, my specialism. It's also my home.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
Perfect.
Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking,
Thank you so much.
trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
Let's get into the sport and what an epic story we've got to kick things off, Jackie.
It's such a great story, isn't it? Aaron Ray, who would have picked him before the PGA Championship teed off? I don't think many people would have done. You know, he's your classic sort of, you know, grind out results, work really hard. It's taking him a long time to get to the top in golf. You know, he's a proper pro, done it the hard way, not a flash in the pan. You know, they're all thereabouts. However, he got his maiden major victory last night at Randwick Golf Club in Pennsylvania, and it was absolutely brilliant because I think a lot of the pros really struggled with this course and just couldn't really find the birdies easy to come by. He's from Wolverhampton. He's got a Kenyan mum, Indian father. He keeps his golf clubs completely wrapped up, like he's got covers on all the golf clubs, not just the drivers, because when he was young, it was a habit he got into to protect the clubs. And he said when he finished playing golf, his dad used to take the mud out of the irons with the pin and then wipe them with oil and then cover them, because he had one set of clubs and one set only, and they were not going to be replaced. So they looked after them meticulously. And he said, I'm always going to do that, even though he probably gets them for free. Right.
Certainly will from tomorrow onwards.
Yeah, from tomorrow onwards. Won £2.6 million and said afterwards in his press conference, well, I'll probably celebrate with a burrito. On the way home, we'll just stop off and have a little snack. Anyway, this is how he did it on the course. This is how he mastered the PGA Championship. First Englishman in over 100 years to win it. He was 3 behind with 10 to play. This 45-foot eagle at the 9th, really pushing him up the leaderboard, which was so congested. It was really hard to tell who was going to come out on top in this tournament. The back 9 he played was brilliant. 4 birdies on the back 9, including a really difficult putt on the 17th. Massive putts that all of the commentators were saying, this is really, really difficult. And I think at this moment, when he hit it, he knew it was going to go in. And I think that's when he knew he was going to win, because it left him a very sort of comfortable final hole to play. He could 2-putt the 18th, which he did. And just played sort of sensibly, didn't try and drive it really miles. He just plotted his way around the golf course, and he ended up with the PGA trophy. Funnily enough, it's the first time in the modern era that the opening 2 men's majors have been won by European players. He is very popular on the tour, and I think because he's so humble, that's why he's so popular. This is him afterwards.
People that come to my mind are my mom, my dad, my siblings, my wife. There's absolutely so much that goes into this. My coaches who were with me since I was 10 years old, my sponsor, Shabir Randari, who's been with me since I was 8 years old, that there's an absolute team of people that go into just even having the opportunity to play professionally.
Yeah, so we finished with a 5 under 65, finished 3 clear of the rest.
So we've had a
good cushion, actually.
We've had 2 of the 4 majors.
Yeah.
I wonder if they ever gone through with none of them being won by Americans. So we're halfway there.
I don't know. That's a good Google. You can do that when we come off air.
Yeah.
I'm sure back in the day, probably.
Probably, yeah.
In the olden days, like in 1919, when the last English guy won this. I was really fortunate football yesterday. West Ham in dire trouble. They needed to be really good going to Newcastle. In fact, they were really the opposite of really good, gifting 2 goals. And, well, they're in a dire situation now. 1 game to go. If Chelsea get a point, if Spurs get a point at Chelsea on Tuesday, then they are down, because they have such a superior goal difference to West Ham. I mean, they fought at the end, but it was really too late. 3-1 defeat to Newcastle, and you just feel like all the good players will go, and they're going to be walking through that championship door.
It was a massive result, that, but it's not over yet.
It's not over yet, no. Well, Spurs are not good at Chelsea.
No.
They've got to go to Chelsea. Chelsea might have a new manager bounce, because they signed Xabi Alonso. It was confirmed yesterday, 4-year deal. He's not there yet, but
and then it will go down to the final day.
He's coming, and then it will go down to the final
Which
day.
anything can happen.
West Ham Leeds. So yeah, it could go down to that.
Who's Spurs got on the last?
I knew you were going to ask that. I can't remember.
Yeah.
Wilf, you're being
Yeah, sorry, I'm really asking unanswerable.
really like
The prior one was really unanswerable. That one we maybe could have got.
Oh.
I'm going to look up. In the meantime.
Google.
Come on.
Now, it was more VAR controversy yesterday as well. I think the result was less important than maybe the VAR, but, Forrest would argue that it was important, because this VAR decision at Manchester United cost them a point. It would have been 2-2. As it turned out, it was 3-2. It was a handball again. No one understands this rule, I don't think. So, Mbomo, it comes off his hip, hits his arm, the ball squirms loose, and Cunha scores. It goes to VAR. And then the referee says, well, I'm not doing that. I'm going to stick with my original decision. The goal stands. And it just, even Gary Neville said the decision was a shocker. Alan Shearer, same, a shocking decision. What are the rules? No one gets it?
I don't understand VAR. I just don't get it.
I think there's so many rules as well. I mean, especially the grappling in the area as well, corners, free kicks. What are the rules on that? You've got to look at those in the close season, because it's just...
It's not consistent.
It's just not consistent.
Spurs have got Everton on the last day of the season.
Oh, yeah,
so,
that's right, yeah.
David Moyes might want to do a favour for his old team, West Ham.
I don't think any favours are given. I mean,
by trying to win
Arsenal
a
played
game.
Burnley tonight, and no favours will be given there, even though Burnley, possibly half on the beach. They want to finish,
of course,
with a bang.
I was saying, would Everton want to win? Yeah. Anyway, I hope it all goes to the final day. I mean, not least because Arsenal won't have choked yet, but in all positions.
It's a really big match tonight, actually.
Massive night, yeah. But also still for the right fight for Europe, the fight at the bottom.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
It's been a really brilliant season. It's been a very brilliant season in Scotland as well, which we didn't really have time to talk about. We talked about it a lot yesterday. Heartbreaking for Hearts, but Celtic, credit where credit's due on the pitch. They did what they needed to do.
Apart from entering the pitch at the end.
Well, the football part, they did what they needed to do. True. We should mention the Red Roses, actually, because it was Six Nations yesterday and they won it. It was the decider with France. They were in France, in Bordeaux, and they won it. It's their 8th successive victory in this tournament. And you might think, well, they're the world champions, they should really win it. But 11 players from that World Cup final didn't play yesterday, injured or having babies. So it was a whole new crop that had to step up. And
very impressive.
And they did. It was really impressive.
And that was played in Bordeaux, you said?
Yes.
Where?
You're going to ask me another question about Bordeaux? Come on.
No, we didn't have time to get to this, but there's a new story that said in the last year, France, for the first time, has drunk more beer than wine in the last year.
It's not very French, is it? Let's be honest.
No. But
yeah.
There we go.
Apparently it's because of the cost of living. Cheaper to get a pint than to
really?
drink wine. Well, that's the spin being put on.
Fun fact, guys.
There you go.
On that note, we're out of time. Thanks so much for watching. Much more to come on the other side of this.